just right now. I'm excited for this. I don't know about you.
So one good thing for Nick is Dane already has a paid invite.
Yep.
So he might be a little less motivated to win than usual. But it is going to be a very hard matchup for Nick.
So just looking at the bracket and looking at pass downs, we do have sorry, what is it? I think this means that Jalen actually gets an unpaid invite, whether or not he won or lost, because we have Dane has a paid invite, and Nick Blandon already has an unpaid invite from Top 8 Worlds last year. And I believe that the invite structure for this tournament is first place gets paid, second and then third place get unpaid. And do you know if the third place payoff for unpaid is based on Swiss standings, or is it? Do you actually play for third place in this scenario? Because I'm actually not sure about that.
I think they would play for it, since it would be an invite. I think they will.
Okay.
They will have them play it out.
So still waiting on the results of Jalen versus Nicholas Demule. But if I'm correct, I do believe that Jalen will have an invite regardless, because we do have 2 invites in the top 4 already. So the third place would pass down to fourth place, and then the second place would pass down to fifth place. Fifth place, even if Jalen lost, would be Jalen. So if Jalen wins, then the invite would actually go to Anton. So that's kind of where the unpaid invite is up in the air right now. If Jalen won, then Jalen and Anton both have unpaid, guaranteed at least. And if Jalen lost, then Jalen still gets an unpaid. So interesting stuff in the brackets, but we are about to be getting into this match between Nick Blandon and Dane PD.
When we were talking about the Persia Mirror, I actually think Izunagi and Spinning Mist might not even be the Persia deck of choice if the Mirror was not so important. I think the Mirror is actually one of the times where Spinning Mist shines the most.
Absolutely.
If the Mirror was not such a big deal, I think Persia decks would actually be running a different list and maybe not even running Spinning Mist.
I think that the Mariabella focus list would be a lot more popular. I think that Mariabella alone makes so many matchups Persia favored. I think that card makes your Fox matchup a lot better. I think it makes your Death and Taxes matchup a lot better. I think that Gwyber's kind of 50-50, whether you go the Mariabella list or if you go for Spinning Myths. But really, it is like the direct head-to-head, where if one Persia list is playing Izanagi's and the other one is not, the one that plays Izanagi's is heavily favored. And because Persia is such a strong part of the meta, that's kind of why the Myths list pops up more than other variants. But, there are a lot of other matchups. I know, talking to Alex Blandon, he played all 7 rounds playing a black Gwyber list, and he played against 0 Spinning Myths Persia, which is kind of insane.
Absolutely. But this tournament, the Spinning Myths Persia was only like 20%, something like that.
Oh, wow.
I think they said out of the 115 people is 24 people. So it was not played that much, which is really surprising. There were quite a few Lumia lists. There were actually as many Lumia as there was Persia.
Interesting.
So I'm not surprised he didn't hit it. Actually, I played Alhama'at at Ohio, and I built my deck very much to beat Persia Spinning Mist, and I did not hit it once. So
Wow.
It happens.
I kind of think that's why people actually aren't playing Persia, is because there are a lot of things that, people like to complain about Persia, but there are actually a lot of things that can do very well against it. And I think people are afraid to play Persia because as soon as you hit one of those auto-lose matchups, then there's really not much you can do as the Myths deck. And I think that when you look at this top 8, yes, of course, we do see 5 Persia. But just look at the pilots. You've got Nick Blandon, 2 GP wins, top 8 at Worlds. You've got Anton Vahil, 2 GP second places. One of the best players in the game, like known for a thing. You've got Dane Petey, already got second place, and he's basically playing the exact same deck on a run back. You've got Jimmy Nunez, who qualified for Worlds last year, and also I believe he topped 16 nationals, or I think he got like a salty 17th. He was really close to it. Just a lot of like really strong players. Like I honestly think you could put any deck in the hands of some of these guys, and they'd still be making top 8. And because the best players are just saying, you know what, I know that Persia Myths is beatable, but try and beat me, and they're just playing it anyway. I think that's kind of why we're seeing a skew towards the Myths list, and at least a little bit.
Well, and also the Prisia list punishes mistakes. If you make a mistake, there's so much power on that deck that they can just end it in a turn or two. I
One
think
second.
that's
Yep. I'm gonna go solve the microphone issue real quick. Go ahead and keep saying what you were saying.
yeah. I was going to say I think that's one reason why they're also playing it is if you're a good player and you're playing the Prisia deck, if your opponent makes a mistake, even if they are playing a deck that counters it pretty well, you can sometimes just push through lethal and win the game anyway. Where if you're playing another deck and your opponent makes a mistake, sometimes even if you capitalize on it, it doesn't change the game that much because it's not like you could just end the game that turn if you decided. Uh, the power of the Prisia deck being like a one turn kill and you playing another deck, even if it counters it well, that's the scariest part about it is because if you just don't draw your answers or don't have the correct answers for that turn, like they can sometimes just pull one out. Um, a lot of players are playing decks though, like Zero and Alhama'at, like Dane, that counters it well, and they play those decks really well, which you pretty much have to, so that one turn kill, so that sneaky win like just does not happen.
Absolutely. I actually, kind of to exemplify this, I was playing a Jack list in Ohio, and I played against a feasting player who had a very teched out list to kind of beat Prisia, and I beat him game one, and in game two, he chooses to take the draw away from me, so he goes second, and he goes turn one, Death Scythe, uh, Energize Tama, play a Gwyber, Adam Brawley over my Tama and my token, play another Gwyber. So his turn one is Death Scythe, Gwyber, Gwyber. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. And then on turn two, I just called a stone and passed. I had played a Guinevere or something turn one. Like I wasn't even threatening a lethal, and he just opened the nuts on me. So I go turn two, call stone pass. I just have 2 mana open, and I'm not doing anything with it. And then he just attacks with both of his Gwybers, and then plays another Resonator or something. And because he attacked with both of his Gwybers, I Heavenly Gusted his Death Scythe before untap, and then killed him on turn three when he had double Gwyber Death Scythe turn one. And it's just those little mistakes that sometimes the weaker players might just make that don't even look like mistakes 9 times out of 10. But against Prisia, you just cannot give them an inch, or else they'll take a mile. And that's exactly the kind of thing that happens when these kind of matchups happen.
Oh, absolutely. And when we were talking about Fox, like that's one of the things about Fox. Like even though I think the Fox, after it survives a few turns, it is favored. If at any point he can just get Prisia through your flyers for one turn, that's all he needs.
Yeah.
You still have to play very safe.
All right, it looks like we are shuffling up here, and this game will be getting underway. We do have Alhama'at. Nick playing on his first seed, but because he is playing Myths Prisia, I do believe he will choose to go second. That's usually what the Prisia players are doing nowadays.
So Dane has a seal, he has a Death Scythe, and a Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly in his opening hand. I can't tell what the other two cards are, um, but he definitely is happy about the Death Scythe.
It
And
looks like there's an Abdul in there as well.
yeah, and the Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly is pretty nice too.
Yeah, there's probably going to be a turn when Death Scythe, or he's going to let Nick play his Regalia as long as he feels like he's not going to die, and then the Moonbeam Butterfly into a Barrier of Shadows is going to get into this long game scenario that Dane really wants to see. And then if that wasn't Abdul that I saw, the Abdul is going to lock out the Izanagi, and this game's going to go a lot more turns than Prisia is really comfortable with. So we'll see how Nick is able to combat that kind of stalling power.
Yeah, I personally like he kept the seal when in light. I personally maybe would have pitched it. I It's such a strong card if you can get the will developed and like survive until turn like 3 or 4. But I would almost pitch it and try to get like a space time or something that can actually deal some damage to Prisia.
He is going first, so maybe that kind of played into his decision making process. But I mean, in my mind, I think my turn two is going to be Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly for a barrier, so you're not going to be holding open the seal mana to beat a spinning miss, which is I assume exactly what he is saving it for. So we'll
Yeah,
see what kind of plans he has for that.
if he has an Abdul, I could also just see him playing turn 2 Abdul with the Death Scythe out,
Yeah.
depending on what Nick plays here though.
One thing that I am interested that hasn't popped up in this deck list is I think that Melfi is actually a really good card for this mid-range style of Alhama'at deck, where you are just playing resonators all the time, and you are trying to cast large Moonbeam Butterflies to give your deck utility. I feel like Melfi also just being a good card against Prisia, where it can kind of stop the uh, just stop the damage return. Like you just bear magic a Sacred Elf and then you Melfi the Prisia. That's a really powerful play. I'm surprised that it hasn't found its way into Dean Patey's list since Texas, but apparently he feels comfortable with what he has.
Well, the other thing is though, his list. I've actually tested Melfi some in Alhama'at, and
Mm-hmm.
his list is not running the Ancient Heartfelt Fires. It's not
That's
running
true.
a lot of the Torrent ways to trigger Melfi. Um, so that might be a very good reason why he's not as well.
That doesn't make a lot of sense. And there is the turn to Abdul. Is this going to be a wall of wind? That's not good for Dane. But it does, because the Death Ice is still there, probably not going to be too scary. It really just is the fact that you want that Abdul to hit the field so that this Hydromonica doesn't become a liability down the road. But he does have the Moonbeam Butterfly, so maybe the Moonbeam looks for a Abdul now instead of the Barrier of Shadows that I was thinking about earlier.
Yeah, that wall of wind was huge though. Keeping that Abdul off, especially since he doesn't have a very good way to remove Abdul, that was big.
Yeah. And I think the stone lineup for Dane's list is 4 Alhama'at stone, and then it's either 4 Dark Depths or 3 Dark Depths. Okay, it is 4 Dark Depths and then 3 Black Silence. So he did not, because of the fact that he ripped the Dark Depths, which is one of his 4 stones. He wasn't able to cast the Moonbeam Butterfly or hold open the Seal Mana. So Abdul was kind of his only play. Hopefully, he's able to find a white source coming to turn 3 here, or else he could actually be in a lot of trouble, especially against double Sacred Elf.
Well, and I know how he likes to play. He likes to get Abdul or Shade down turn 2. Like he just likes to have something on board,
Gotcha.
just to put some pressure on.
Hmm.
So I am not surprised at all that he played that Abdul. Even if he didn't have another play, he probably would have done that anyway.
It looks like Nick's kind of setting himself up for a World Flame summoning here. We are going to go into 3 stones and 4 mana counters, so it is going to be a potential World Flame summoning. And if Dane chose to, he could even play around Wall of Wind because he would have that extra magic mana counter that he could use to cast it. So unless Nick has the Keen Sense, I'm not exactly sure how many copies of that card he is playing. But this could be a World Flame summoning turn coming out of Dane, and I think that would be incredibly powerful at this point in the game.
Yeah, I don't think Nick has an answer to it. I don't think he can play around it though. I think he pretty much just has to go for his game plan and just say, what's the odds of him drawing one of his World Flames?
Yeah, I think it's 2 World Flames in a 43 card deck. I almost threw up saying that, but
I don't know what Nick's playing that could counter it. I'm guessing he's playing one Keen Sense main, and I doubt he's playing more than one more Wall of Wind. Which, like you said, he could play around it if he wanted to. I think right now he's very close to getting lethal. Like he should just stick to his game plan.
looking at Nick's list right now, it's actually incredibly interesting. It's 1 Wall of Wind main, only 2 Rewriting Laws, and only 2 Guinevere. And he is on the double Wind secluded double final forfeit, and there are no Keen Senses in Nick's list. So it is only the 1 Wall of Wind that is a counterspell available for Nick.
Yeah, and I think if he tried to pretend like he had a Keen Sense up, like I think Dane would just play it anyway. Like I think he would just World Flame anyway.
Yeah.
So I think right now Nick can't pretend to be playing around World Flame. I think he just has to play like he normally would and
Yeah.
pretend like Dane can't draw it.
Still no white source here, and that is going to limit his options a lot. Hopefully, there's a World Flame with. Otherwise, I don't think there's any Captain Hook in Nick's main board. It is very similar to Anton's list. I think they might even be the same list. So there's no Captain Hook available game 1. There will be game 2 and game 3. And that's just going to be a shade because, Dane, we've seen the white cards in Dane's hand with these double blue sources. There's just not much else that he can really do. So this Hydromonica is going to get, free reign here. And we're going to see what it is that Nick has been looking for.
Oh, absolutely. But the other thing is him having the shade out does help some. Like at least he can gain some life if he needs to.
Yeah. I do have to assume that with the first Hydro, that Nick went for the Wind Secluded. I think that's the only card in this scenario that I would really assume that he had, because you are against Alhama'at. There is the 1 Black Moonbeam and the double Rune of Soul that Alhama'at just has. So I think that the first Hydro got the Wind Secluded. He drew that for turn, and now he's stacking with the second Hydro, and this is going to be you know, he can't play Wind Secluded if he wants to if he wants to do the Resonator Flicker, and he can't even do the Resonator Flicker because of the shade. So he's just gonna try and get maybe a Leviton on the top actually. Oh, it
Yeah,
does make sense because the Death Scythe.
I
I lied
think
again.
I'm not sure what he stacked the first time. I bet he got a Wind Secluded. Wind Secluded's always good in this matchup. Plus, you just get to draw another card anyway. Um, but I could see him getting a Leviton on one of these draws. Even though he has the Death Scythe out, you need the Leviton at some point anyway.
Yeah.
Or he could draw, an anti Death Scythe card and just hope he draws one of his 4 copies of Leviton. That would make sense as well.
Yeah, there's the Wind Secluded. Maybe it's a Heavenly Gust. And he's just gonna hold the mana here. That could be an option. It could also, if he's planning on playing a longer game, he could have grabbed the Frigg on the second thing. So he's gonna maybe aggressively Wind Secluded the Shade if the Shade tries to kill a Sacred Elf, and then he'll use the Frigg to. Oh, it's just second Wind Secluded. Okay, he's trying to play as safe as possible. He noticed that there are no Heavenly Gusts in Dane's list, so this is just gonna set up a lethal push as soon as he can find another Regalia.
Absolutely. Since he knows his list and knows he doesn't have Heavenly Gust, I think getting another Wind Secluded was the right move because he can just draw a card off of it anyway. He might draw something else he needs, and now he's got 2 out. That's pretty safe.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think what options Dane has left here on 4 mana. The only thing that can really save him here would be a World Flame summoning just to clear up the Sacred Elves and also, take down a stone. So there's not too many scary things happening. The fact that Nick doesn't have another Regalia means that flipping isn't lethal here. But he has plenty of time to find it, and that's really, really not looking good for Dane because he doesn't have the only answers to these Wind Secludes are the Fairy of Sacred Visions, and as we saw, he called another Dark Depths, hasn't found the white source, can't play this Moonbeam Butterfly.
Yeah, his stones have been very unfortunate this game. Like him not having any white source or even like an ancient magic stone or something like that, like has really hurt him.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I think the only thing that could possibly happen here would be some space-time shenanigans just to like you have to let space-time resolve as Prisia because you can't Wind Secluded it because you have to save the Wind Secluded for the Moonbeam. So space-time anomaly would be able to make Prisia weak enough that he wouldn't just completely die on one turn, and that's going to be a Heavenly Gust. That is absolutely backbreaking.
Yeah.
And there's no white mana, so there's no seal available. I think we're going to be seeing a quick game 2 here. Just a lot of really good draws for Nick, and then just using the Hydromonica to get exactly what he needs, and then knowing what he needs to win this matchup, and just the stones just not lining up properly for Dane to be able to play against it.
And I would have been really interested to see what else Dane kept in his opening hand. We know he kept in a duel, a Death Scythe, a Seal, and a Kage's Moonbeam Butterfly. I wonder what the 5th card was. Because I probably would have pitched Seal, and I probably would have pitched whatever that 5th card was.
Yeah, it definitely depends. It might have been like a Rune of Soul or a Black Moonbeam. I feel like you definitely keep those in this matchup. But again, Seal, when you have the Moonbeam Butterfly, I feel like the Seal can go just so that you can try and find the Moonbeam, the Black Moonbeam, because then you don't have to Rune of Soul for it. It just makes the matchup a lot easier. And this is not. I'm trying to think. It's just what you double space time here, and then you don't die.
Well, if he even has a space time, if he had a Rune of Soul, I feel like he would have already used it by now, to grab something.
Just to get the World Flame summoning.
Get the World Flame, or to. I mean, he could even get an Ancient Knowledge. Like he just needs
just
stuff.
Look. Yeah. That's gonna be. All right, so we've got 12, 14, 16, 18. That's 18 damage from Regalia alone, and then 22 from the Resonators. So if you do get at least one space time through, you will survive at 100 life.
Yeah, I think this is just game though. I don't think there's anything.
That's gonna be
right now.
Yeah, if he can just stop one space time there, then he's gonna be able to. So he can Wind Secluded one space time, and then he still has a Wind Secluded to stop the only Black Moonbeam that Dane plays. So this is lethal every time. I don't think there's anything that Dane has in his deck that can stop this.
Well, if Dane had like Black Moonbeam plus 2 space times, if he had Black Moonbeam plus a space time, like
I don't think that stops it.
Well, he could Black Moonbeam for the ancient magic counters. Then he could space time it. Uh,
Oh, he still has shade, so the life gain from shade would actually keep him alive.
yeah, but actually, if he space time twice plus a Black Moonbeam, and then with shade, it would deal quite a bit. He wouldn't shade this turn though if he had all of that.
I was thinking that because there's two wind secludeds, because Nick has seen the deck list, he knows there's only one Black Moonbeam in Dane's list. He can freely use Wind Secluded on one of the space times to prevent the damage reduction. So then only one space time is hitting the Pristia, right? And when you sack off two of the Sacred Elves, you get up to 22, which would put you to 4,400 damage. So
Oh,
at 44,
absolutely.
yeah. So with the extra Sacred Elf, now it's above 46. So you can let one space time resolve. Oh, that's actually minus 1,000 damage, not minus 5, because you're attacking twice. So it still wouldn't be lethal.
It
So
still wouldn't be lethal, and he could always sacrifice the shade if he was in trouble.
yeah.
But if he had one space time, he would have done it before Chrissy got pumped up.
Yeah.
But if he had one space time and a Black Moonbeam, which is saying he had a pretty good hand, like he's still in trouble.
Yep. I think the fact that the space time didn't come out before these pumps, because you can attempt to kill the Priscia with the shade and the space time. I guess you don't. Maybe you don't target the Priscia with the shade just because you don't want the life gain getting negated. Maybe that's a consideration, but I'm pretty sure Dane just doesn't have the space time here at all, and this is going to be lethal. And yeah, Dane's trying to do the math here to calculate it. It is going to be 2,400 damage per attack for a total of 48. So shade alone is going to still leave him dead by 200. So he needs to have anything else, and I don't think that he has it in his hand at all. And they're just doing the math to confirm. I assume just like we are here, but it's I do believe. I mean, based on what I've seen, I'm pretty sure that's game. So
Yeah, and I'm not surprised he's just counting everything out, just making sure.
yeah, looks like someone's reading Leviton. I don't know.
I think he should actually. Yeah, right now he's fine. He should just let the shade go through.
Yeah,
Let him
because it's
gain
going to
the
be 46, and
Yeah,
this
it
is
won't
still going to
matter.
be. So he
And
does have the space time. See, this is where I think that Dane didn't think he was dead, even with the space time. Because if he had, because it looked to me like maybe Nick tapped both Death Scythe at one time, which is a shortcut that would be very relevant here. I guess if you do tap them separate.
well, he had one rested before recovery. So I mean, the shade
Oh, right, yeah.
wouldn't have killed it anyway. But
You're correct.
but I still would have done it earlier in the turn if I had it in hand.
No, I think it's safe to save it until all of the Sacred Elves have been sacked off, just so if you do manage to not die here, then you're going to be able to, mount some kind of comeback. So he is going to 46, and then this is going to reduce the attack of the Priscia by 500. Priscia was at a 24, so now Priscia is going to be at a 19, and then he's going to take 38 is what's going to happen. Oh, it looks like he doesn't have to got it. Oh, he can't got it. What? Okay, never mind. He was floating a green mana from the Sacred Elf, so he does have the availability to cut art. He's just choosing not to here, and then he's gonna. Oh, I lied. Never mind. I thought that he was deciding not to do it again, but that is going to be 2 attacks, and that is going to be 3,800 damage, and put Stain to 8. So now we have the opportunity to hopefully find a second
So
space time.
How many cards does Dane have? He's got 3 cards now. Like I guess there's no way you would win secluded the other space time.
This is the Fairy of Sacred Vision right here. This is what he's going to Moonbeam Butterfly for. He's going to kill the Wind Secluded, and if he has the Moonbeam, we might actually have a game on our hands. There it is. So then the question is, what cards are in Nick's hand? He's only got 1 card in hand because he sacked off all those Sacred Elves to the Levitine. So now it's just a matter of what can he give Swiftness? How does he mount this comeback? And then what does Dane do to slow it down?
Oh, and he did have the Black Moonbeam. Okay.
Yep. We did find that white source just in time, huh?
Yeah, I was wondering whether he should win secluded the other space time, just not to give Dane another turn. with
No.
5 will, but I don't think there's any way you could.
Yeah, if the moonbeam's there, then you die as soon as you.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
If the moonbeam's there, but uh, and plus, I mean, there's no way you can expect like the Fairy of Sacred Vision to come out this turn as well.
yeah. That white source was just the one thing that was locking Dan out of this game, and he was able to find the way to survive on this turn. All right, Tama, gonna dig a little bit.
Yeah, Tom is great right here because it gets him something on the board, plus gave him another card, um, plus gets 2 in. The good thing here also is if Dane gets an Abdul out, he can still Izanagi and like just swing with it as a vanilla, 11/11.
I
Uh,
think this is where the shades start coming in really huge because even like he's at 600, but like just the fact that the shade in graveyard can come back whenever he needs it, it's going to be infinite life gain almost. He just has 4 shade in his deck, so he can just play shade and then just have a good time there. Like there's a shade now; he's at 1200 life
yeah,
instead of 600.
and with the seal in hand, that's big.
Yeah, this is actually looking like Dane's finally turning the corner and not a moment too soon. Looks like 3 cards in hand. And the one more thing that's really important about this matchup is Nick's list is only playing the 2 Guinevere. He did make some aggressive cuts not to find room for the anti-Preciate cards. He was looking for room for the 4th Death Scythe, looking for room for 2nd Final Forfeit. He is maining 1 Keen Sense. Sorry, I had missed that. He is maining 1 Keen Sense, 1 Wall of Wind, 1 Heavenly Gust. These are cards you typically don't see in a Prisia Myths list because of how many like just combo cards you need. And because he's only playing 2 Guinevere and the 2 rewriting laws as well, it's going to be a lot harder for him to like actually get back on card advantage, especially now that his Prisia's dead because he doesn't get the card draw from the he doesn't get the card draw from his stones. Like in a Jack list, you actually still have access to a lot of cards with your Fiery Foxes being able to sacrifice your stones, draw cards, things like that. In the Myths list, you really don't. So he's pretty much limited to only Tamas and then finding one of his Guineveres.
Yeah, I don't think cutting Guinevere's that bad in this list because most of the time she's just sacrificing herself. You're
Yeah.
actually paying 1 will to just cycle, basically. You do get to discard something like unuseful out of your hand, but she's not as powerful as she would be in like the Jack list or something like that.
Right. All right. So Nick is letting Dane just untap here. Looking at Nick's hand, I did see a Fear and a Spinning Myths, and I believe there's a 3rd card. Couldn't really tell what it was. But oh, there's a World Flame Summoning. I
That,
wonder what modes
that
he's
doesn't
choosing.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt that much actually right now. It gets the Tama out of the way and it gets a stone. I'm surprised he even took the stone instead of just dealing 800. Um, but Dane does like to play until he has a complete control before he even goes for the win.
Yeah, and we do know what outs Nick has available here. It is Spinning Myths plus Keen Sense is pretty much the only thing he can really do now. So by limiting his stones, it's going to allow Dane to just call more stones and then make sure that he will always win the counter spell war, and that a Spinning Myths will never resolve. Nick does have double rules in Moria, so Hardcast Izanagi is available. But keeping him off of the 6 stones this turn, maybe that's what Dane was really going for. He says, "Hey, I don't have the, I don't really want to seal your Izanagi. I want to seal your Spinning Myths and just lock your Izanagis in your hand, I guess." Or doesn't have the Abdul as well. Is trying to find a second Abdul or find the Moonbeam Butterfly. So he didn't want Nick to get to 6 stones and just hardcast Izanagi. No space time at the hands. All right. So look, I'm really curious as to what Dane has in hand right now because there hasn't actually been a lot of instant speed interaction. He's been leaving open all of his mana open, and we know he still has that Seal of Wind and Light, but he hasn't really been doing anything with the mana and just kind of been. And now he's just trying to play the Shade game and just get Shade back forever and forever. And this Guinevere is going to put Nick up to 5 cards in hand, or potentially even 6. And we'll see if this is the turn where he's able to find something to do with it, or if this is really the final nail in the coffin.
Yeah, I'd be really surprised if Dane doesn't have some good answers. Like right now is a good turn for Nick to go for something if he has anything. he can do. But like the Shade's gonna gain 600 pretty much no matter what.
Yeah.
Uh, Plus the seal in hand's gonna stop something big. Um,
Looking at the mana that Dane left open, it looks like Seal plus Bear Magic. Even if you know Nick does have any resonators that he can play that can even remotely threaten the life total of Dane, they can just get turned into a bear, lose their swiftness, and then just get dealt with by Shade on the following turn. So it really does look like Dane has us locked up. I'm trying to think of any combination of cards that would allow for Nick to really have a chance here, and it's just not adding up in my head. I wonder if so. This is really good, right? Because Dane knows that there's a Frigg in Nick's list, and that is the card, the only card that can possibly pull Nick back is Frigg, and then just start getting things going. So
yeah,
he has to think: do I want to cancel this spinning myths? Am I like, is this where the Frigg comes in and starts being annoying, or what's going to happen?
I am surprised he let that resolve there. He
He's
he
gonna,
he's gonna bear it with the
yeah.
damage on it. So that makes sense. He's just gonna deal with it that way and keep his seal.
And then he's going to get back the Shade here. So the Guinevere is probably going to tap to, tap to get the Izanagi to draw two. But then next turn, Dane just gets back a Shade and then kills the Guinevere while she's still tapped. And
Yeah,
then
he's just
there's
gonna
still
keep
a Bear
getting
Magic.
every turn. I bet.
But we do have to. I wonder if Nick is thinking about just scooping this up here because I think that it'd be very difficult for Dane to lose a game at this point, just based on the fact that his life total is going to steadily grow up. He's got an infinite supply of Shades just sitting in his graveyard, and then he's going to just keep drawing cards every turn. There's not that many resources actually available for Nick to even have a chance to come back here. Is he looking at the clock saying how much time do I need to win 2 games? Like,
Yeah. Do
yeah.
they have extended time in semifinals?
No, it's either 50 or 60 minutes, but we
It's
do have
probably
the clock on the left.
yeah, it's probably 60 minutes. Um, I when I was playing top eight against Dane, I conceded pretty early. It was like turn 5 or 6, uh, because if he can kill Prisia earlier in the game, like
Yeah.
you're probably just not going to get through. And time does become a concern. Right now, they're only 15 minutes in, or I guess maybe 25.
I
But
think it's 15.
I
I
think
think it
he's
is
got
50 minutes.
yeah, I think he's got enough time. Like he's okay right now. But I do think Nick either needs to make something happen soon or does need to scoop.
It looks like Dane just chose to seal the Guinevere, and I guess that does mean that he is just trying to keep Nick out of cards. That's why he was fine letting the Spitting Myth resolve, because he didn't think that Nick had the Izanagi in hand. I mean, had the Frigg in hand. He's like, I think that you're going to cast an Izanagi here because you want to attack my life total. So that's why he let the Spitting Myth resolve. But the Guinevere does not want Nick getting any extra cards, wants to keep him as low on resources as possible, and then just let Shades do Shade things and just grind him out of the game.
Well, and spinning miss, that is one downside to it. It does get 2 cards out of your hand instead of just one.
Yeah.
Um, so
So
it does
maybe
hurt you
Dane's
a little
just
bit.
like, hey, that's fine. It's 2 cards, absolutely, let it go.
If it would have been a frig though to get a wind secluded back plus 2 resonators, it would have hurt some. But he didn't have that many good resonators in his graveyard anyway. Like he would have grabbed maybe a Tama or something
Yeah,
for
that's the only thing
another
I can
win.
think of.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting here that Dane allowed Nick to untap with the Guinevere. He could have popped one of the Shades to kill it before untap, but chose not to. I guess double Shade just threatens killing Izanagi. He is looking at the 6 stones that Nick has, potentially 7, and he's just saying, "Hey, I think I'm about to get an Izanagi just hard cast on me, so I just want to double Shade those." And he thinks that this Guinevere is not as big of an issue as just protecting his life total. And I feel like with the finite number of actual relevant cards that Nick has left in his deck, I think that's probably correct.
I think Nick just drew the frig. I
Yeah,
think he
he drew
just drew
spinning
the
with
frig
Frig.
and the spinning. So really seeing if this resolves is pretty big. I'm guessing Dane might actually have another seal in hand, especially if he sealed the Guinevere so easily.
That is also a read that I'm getting here. Leaving open the white green mana just kind of like telegraphs it. Even if he doesn't have it, like even if Frig resolves here, it gets back Izanagi, Spinning Myths, something else. I'm not. It's hard to say what
If
Frig
it,
actually accomplishes here.
yeah, absolutely, he had the seal. But if Frigg actually did land and got the wind secluded plus the spinny mist plus the Izanagi, like it would have been pretty big.
Well, it is landing here. It looks like a Keen Sense is going to let the Smiths go through.
Oh wow, okay. So I do think this is pretty big. Him landing the Frigg helps more than any other combo in his deck could have.
I mean, he expect Wind Secluded. I think he expected Keen Sense, right? He just Keen Sense the seal to ensure that this could go through. I feel like Keen Sense has to be the most relevant spell that he's got in his graveyard.
It,
Heavenly.
yeah, it depends on what his hand is. He might just want to get a spinning and a Izanagi, just try to put even more pressure out. He's got to do pressure quick because he's going to just resonance these shades every turn and just start gaining a ton of life. So Keen Sense would stop him from playing like a kill spell, but he does need to get pressure out as soon as he can.
He's choosing to get back a Tama instead of an Izanagi, which I think is incredibly interesting.
Yeah. The other thing is Dane will get to untap, like for sure. I almost think Nick's just at the point of being in too big of trouble.
Yeah, that is what it seems like. Looks like he's giving Swiftness Flying to the Frigg. I mean, the Frigg just dies on board, and then the Shades can come back if he really wants to, and then the Shades just kill an Izanagi as soon as it comes down. Like, there's really not. I mean, it's Wind Secluded into Izanagi. That's the concern here. But
well, he just called a stone. He put the counters on Frigg. I'm sure the triggers.
Yeah.
He should if he would have grabbed the Izanagi, he could have swung with Frigg here and just played another spinning miss Izanagi, which would have been nice. I'm surprised. I'm surprised he didn't grab that Izanagi.
I think it's possible he has another Tama in his hand, and he's trying to double Tama to pop a Shade before he plays an Izanagi, so that he can guarantee the Izanagi through. Because it's very difficult to actually get enough damage on an Izanagi quickly enough.
But
if you have Wind Secluded and Tama to protect it.
He already knows there's a Bear Magic in the graveyard, though. That's the thing.
So that's where the Wind Secluded goes, and then you double Tama the Shade on his opponent's turn to stop the Shade from being there. Then there's only one Shade and 0 Bear Magic available for Dane, and that's how he anticipates getting an Izanagi through. I assume he already has one in his hand, but honestly, it just seems like it only gets you one turn. And when your opponent's already at 2000 life, there's actually not a lot you can really do with one turn of Izanagi. Oh boy.
I mean, he can kill the Shade here.
Why did he play Shade first? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Shoot the.
Yeah, he should have done that first.
Yeah. Just a slight misstep there. Wasn't really thinking about it.
Yeah, I still don't think it matters too much because he needs an Izanagi out for 2 turns to really get the life total down here.
And the Izanagi needs to remove something, which there's nothing to remove right now. So now it's an Izanagi, because it's not removing anything, is only a 9/9, and Dane's at 28. So that's 3 turns of damage that this Izanagi can deal, and it's still not lethal. I don't see how Nick comes back to this, and that's his last stone in his deck. So there's only one more Swiftness trigger available for.
And this actually came up a lot when I was playing control decks against Priscia. If you can actually get them to run out stones,
it's over.
It's so over. Yeah. I think Nick should just scoop here. I really do. I mean, he has a Wind Secluded out, and I understand him playing it out, but I would just scoop. He's got 30 minutes to do the next 2 games.
So here's maybe some logic that Nick's thinking of. He knows that if he's able to win game 2, it's going to be like that. I guess it's not going to be a long game. So then if game 3 is going to come down to life total, he wants the clock to be as short as possible. Because if he gives Dane a long game 3, then the Shades are just going to give him too much life, and Dane's going to win in life total if the game's not ending. But if it's a really quick game 3, then Nick will have the advantage because of the burst power of Priscia.
Yeah, but the other thing is also Shades gain life. So if it comes down to a life total game, if he draws a Shade and plays it on turn 2, that can be a life total thing too. It just depends on the timing of it. But who goes last or something like that. But I mean, Dane does have some pretty early life total game as well.
Yeah, I think that the swiftness triggers from Prisia just allow, spinning myths and even Tama's poking through to just do more damage too early. So like in like a 4 turn game, I think Prisia is favored for life total, but in like a 6 or 7 turn game, I think Dane ends up favored in life total. So Nick is probably thinking, if I win game 2, it's going to be in 5 minutes if I win at all, because he just doesn't think he's going to win the long game. Um, but even that, like that's what I'm assuming Nick is thinking here. Like he wants a very short game 3, like if at all. And the problem I have with this is that because Nick is going to board into multiple frigs, multiple wins included, I think it's very, very likely that Nick is capable of winning a longer game. So he should be conceding now. He should be trying to give himself as much time as possible, because when Prisia comes out of post board, you actually are able to compete with control decks at their own game, and he's not allowing himself the time to be able to do that with this. This is by not conceding, basically.
Yeah, I think you're right. I would have conceded already and tried to play the game. I know, especially after sideboard, Prisya gets way better in this matchup, and the games do last quite a bit longer. Actually, if he finds a really early win, I would be more surprised than if he won the game like going a little bit longer. Um, but I do think game 3 it would really depend on when they went to time. If they had barely any time for a game 3, I think it's fairly even. It just depends on what turn it ends on. If turn 3 was like Dane's turn, 2 or whatever, then I think he'd have a pretty good shot at just landing a shade and then hitting Nick on his next turn. I don't know. I do think there's some play both ways. I would just be scooping and trying to have more time for the next game.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna. We'll see if it comes back to bite him. But it looks like Dane is just gonna get back a couple shades here. Just go ahead and play them both, and that's going to make quick work of the Izanagi. Dane's going to go back to almost 4,000 life, and Nick is going to be just out of options here. He's already used his Frig. He still has a Keen Sense in hand, but that's the only lifeline he has left here. And there's no Heavenly Gust. There's no Captain Hook. There's no. It's just I think 1 or 2 more Izanagi that he has available, and that's just not going to be enough to deal with all these shades that keep getting thrown out here. And yeah, he has no more stones in deck, so the resonance triggers are all gone.
Yeah, he's definitely just buying time right now. There's no reason that Nick would be Nick's a good enough player. There's no reason he'd be playing this out right now. He's just he seriously is like part of his strategy must be the time game.
Yeah. And it looks like Jeremy is saying in chat that he's trying to see if he runs out of shades. But yeah, no, there's just Dane does run the 11 stone, so there's that 1 extra shade trigger that he's able to get off with that last stone there. And it looks like Nick is going to concede here a little bit late, but maybe not too late. We'll have to see how it ends up playing out with time in game 3. So we're going to go into sideboards here, and that's going to open up some interesting options for both players. Dane has a lot of crazy things on his sideboard, a lot of one-ofs, and then in Nick's sideboard, you do see the Captain Hook. You do see 3 Frig, 2 more wins included, 3 more Keen Senses. So game 2 for Nick is going to have 4 Frig, 4 wins included, 4 Keen Sense, and Burn the Cinders as well to help deal with the Abduls and the Shades. So we'll see how that kind of comes into play, and especially what Nick chooses to side out.
I mean, obviously, Nick, he's going to side out some of his death sides. He's going to side out probably the final forfeits. I don't think he'd leave them in. I think he'd rather just have the burn ascenders. He's going to take out maybe. I I think you leave the wall of winds in actually, or the one wall of wind. I think you probably leave it in just to have more counter spells.
Yeah.
And then you obviously side out the Izanagis.
You think so?
I think you would side out at least 3 of the Izanagis, if not all 4 of them, and just run all Frigs with Spinning Miss. I'd probably side out 3 Izanagis, and
just
then
to have the one just in case.
just have the one just in case. But I would also probably side out maybe a Tama or 2. Like
The World of Madness, yeah.
You have to keep it. You have to keep in mind that like this deck is very tight. Persia Miss, there's not much room at all. So you have to start making some sacrifices to side stuff out. And the Hydromonicas are so important because they can find what you need, and the little 1-drop draw card creatures become less important because a lot of times you don't even want to cycle too much. Like maybe into a Captain Hook if you get really early, But if it gets past turn like 2 or 3, you do not want to be cycling that resonator for the top of your deck resonator because he can just space time or something in response. So the small guys don't matter as much as they would in like the mirror match or something like that.
Yeah, and one thing I did think that Nick and him running the same list, but Nick actually does not have any Captain Hook in his sideboard. There's no Captain Hook main, no Captain Hook in the sideboard, so that won't be an option. It's only the Izanagis and the Frigs that are going to be the options off of the Spinning Myths.
Yeah,
and the Hydro Triggers.
I actually think I would probably either take out 3 or all 4 of the Izanagis, depending on how his deck's set up, but and just go basically all Frigs, just try to get as much value as you can. That's how you're gonna win.
Yeah, we'll see how he ends up doing it here. Looks like Dane is ready to go. He's shuffling up. I'm going to take a bathroom break real quick. If you want to go ahead and keep talking about the sideboards while I'm gone, I'll be back in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'll check out Landon's list real quick. So he has the 4 Sacred Elves. Okay, he's very likely going to side out some Sacred Elves. Like probably take out at least 1 or 2 Sacred Elves. Maybe 1 Tama. He's going to take out probably 3 Death Size and leave 1 in just so he can get the OTK. Maybe leave 2 in. And then he's going to take out. He's going to put in 2 more Winds Secluded. He's going to take out the Final Forfeits, put in the Burn to Cinders. He's going to put in the. He might even put in the Bombardment to deal with the Abduls, plus to have a little bit of reach. Like last game, if he had an if he had a bombardment in hand, it could deal 600 when he was at 600 life. It would have been huge. He's going to bring in the Keen Senses, all 3 Frigs for sure. He's going to leave in the Hydromonicas and the Spinning and the Rewriting because why not? It's kind of a free card. And then Dane, I don't think Dane's going to change up too much. He's going to bring in some Abduls for sure. He's also probably going to bring in maybe 1 more Barrier or 1 more Death Scythe. But he's not going to change it too much. He might actually take out the Alice World of Madness, just take it out. It doesn't hit too much besides like the Thomas. And he is going to be trying to get his Black Moonbeam, trying to get like a Runesoul. He definitely wants to get a Barrier or a Death Scythe to slow the game down, and he wants to get an Abdul for turn 2. That would be kind of the best cards he could get. So it looks like Nick has decided to go first. I think going first here is... I personally like going first with Percy Miss against Alhama'at. He does get so much advantage from drawing a card and having the Energize, which kind of mana fixes. Like last game where his stones were so bad. With the Energize, you can get that 1 Light Will if you really need it. But I still think going first and just having the permanent stones is more important for Prisia. Oh, never mind. Actually, he decided to go second. So he didn't want Dane to have the extra card and the Energize, which could fix his mana. But the turn 1 Barrier is huge. It definitely hurts Prisia quite a bit. And the barrier is less about like stopping Prisia. It's more just buying time, because if he can get to turn 3 or 4, then he's going to be in a very good position. So the turn passing was interesting. He probably has a space time, and he's trying to hold that up for Gwen if she taps on something, or just if something else comes down. If he had an Abdul, he would have played it. He doesn't have Will for Seal. If he had a Shade, he would have played it. So that makes you think that he does not have Shade or Abdul for sure. And it is likely he would have a space time or something like that. Nick did sack his Gwen. He's just trying to get as much pressure as he can early. So he's hoping he draws into some more pressure cards. I did see he had another Gwen in hand. So I'm sure that's going to come down this turn.
All right, I am back. Sorry about that. And how's it looking so far? Barrier Shadows is a good opener.
Yeah, when Secluded comes down, that's very good. Uh, and the Hydromonica, which is very good because he can just find what he needs. Uh, he still has the Energize, so I think I would play Gwyn here. But
So
he just passed the turn.
Guinevere here ate herself and discarded Keen Sense. Is that what happened with that?
That is what happened, yeah.
Interesting. Well, he does have 4 Keen Sense, so he probably has multiples in hand and just felt fine pitching one of them away.
The other thing is he does have a Heavenly Gust in hand, so I guess he's just trying to set up for a really quick kill. He might be sandbagging some Regalia in hand as well. But Dane plays a Runasoul and grabs an Ancient Knowledge. Then goes to recovery.
Interesting. So he's just trying to, piece together what he needs here. I'm trying to think like what kind of. So Dane doesn't really need to win this game. He just needs to make sure he doesn't lose in 18 minutes, which is a lot of time to not lose in. And I think that it's going to be really difficult for him to get through all these frigs and wind secludeds and nonsense. And
well, the ancient knowledge, like he's probably going to be digging for a Heavenly Gust. If he gets a Heavenly Gust, especially now that one of the Keen Sense is discarded, like it could just be huge.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if Nick flips soon. If he flips soon and goes, "Hey, I got 2 wins included, I'm fine," then a Heavenly Gust would just be a blowout.
I'm looking at the sideboard here from Dane, just trying to get inside of his head and figure out what maybe he could have boarded in here. The Millennia Bonds are going to help a lot against the Keen Senses, I think, because not only are you stopping the Keen Senses from, pulling Nick ahead, but you're also drawing a card in the process. So definitely something to keep an eye out for. Lumia's Judgment, able to hit multiple wind secluded at the same time. Definitely something to think about. And there's also 2 wind secluded refuge in the sideboard for Dane. I wonder if he actually is going to bring those in for the express purpose of stopping burn dissenters and keeping his Abduls alive. You know what I mean? Just kind of looking at that kind of option and just making sure that
if he lands a Castle of Oni, it will keep his Abduls alive with that as well.
That is also true. And the only addition removal that Nick has is the 1 Heavenly Gust. I think he does not sideboard second. He's only got the 1 Heavenly Gust main, no Heavenly Gust sideboarded. So if the Abdul and Castle do stick, it's actually going to be very difficult for Nick to deal with that, which is perhaps a bit of an oversight in his deck building.
Yeah, I mean with Dane, he's going to side in for sure the Barrier Shadows, for sure the Death Sight, the other Black Moonbeam. He's probably going to pull in for sure he's going to pull in the Heavenly Gust, and then maybe the Fairy of Sacred Vision, and the Abdul. Those are probably all that he would side.
I'm trying to figure out what maybe he values less highly. I feel like you actually don't play. I don't know if you keep in World of Madness. It's good against Tama, but your game plan really is just getting out Abdul, right? And Abdul's going to deal with Tama just fine. But yeah, I don't know.
I think he would take that out. I definitely think he would take that out. And then he's going to take out most likely the Rune of Souls are good. Ancient Knowledges are good. Oh, he's going to take out probably one of the World Flame summonings, at least one of them.
I was thinking he might even go up on World Flame Summoning, but I guess you really don't want to unlock the Priscia Memoria. You don't want to let Nick be able to draw cards off of those. So it's probably it's much less valuable in this matchup than I was initially thinking.
Yeah, it does hit Frigs, but you're spending so much to cast it, especially Ancient Knowledge counters, that if he did have a Keen Sense or a Wall of Wind or something like that, it would hurt you a lot if he countered it. And also, it just doesn't have that much value in this matchup. Like I would have taken out at least one of the World Flame summonings.
Yeah, even 2 is maybe a consideration. I mean, we are looking at there's a lot of things that he could potentially want to bring in here. So just really based on what he's bringing in, is going to affect what he wants to take out.
Oh, absolutely. I like having 1 in there. It depending on what else he might want to take out. One thing about World Flame is it does hit J rulers. You can deal 1,500 to a J ruler, which is kind of nice in some situations. But that'd be one argument for keeping one in, but his deck is so stacked for like anti Prisia type stuff that I would probably just take both out.
Makes sense. So the spinning myths here, it doesn't represent a particularly threatening Izanagi, and it's not an excessively strong Frigg either. But Nick or Dane goes ahead and seals it anyway. What this does mean is that Nick only has the 2 mana available, the 1 stone and the energize, to be able to try and stop, a Heavenly Gust play that Dane might be trying to set up. I'm trying to think like what. Obviously, Dane's going to be playing the control here and just trying to make this game go on as long as possible. So I'm trying to think like exactly how he's trying to take advantage of the fact that Nick doesn't have a lot of mana to work with right now. Is he?
I think right now he'd just love to land an Abdul. I think he'd really like to have an Abdul down, and if he could find the Heavenly Gust, that'd be huge too.
I think if so. Let's see. Nick threatens to flip next turn with 4 mana, but he can't God Art. Oh, okay, that'll do it. I don't hate that at all. And there is nothing that Nick can really do about that. There's just no answers available in red and green at all. Those colors to be able to stop this, except for Wall of Wind. So if Nick is a smarmy bastard and just kept in the 1 Wall of Wind, then we'll see if that's true, but now he's going to go ahead and cycle those stones away.
Yeah, he must have taken Wall of Wind out, because if he had the Wall of Wind, he would have just go in there to try to find it.
Yeah. And yeah, Final Forfeit's not going to stop that, but I also assume that Final Forfeit came out anyway. Just no 1 mana answers, no 2 mana answers even, to be able to deal with a Captain Hook that just comes out of hand. So that's going to actually really put Dane ahead, because now the fact that there's no flip available for Nick, he's only relying on Spinning Myths and Frigg. He has to call stone, or he can just Spinning Myths a Frigg here, but that's just not a very powerful play. You put out an 8/8 and you get back what, a Guinevere and a Spinning Myths. You're still only on 3 stones, and now Dane is going to untap into 6 stones, and that's just going to be brutal.
Yeah, I think Nick's best chance here is if he does have a Heavenly Gust and he torrents it this turn, clears the barriers, and then if Dane just does not have much to deal with a flip, because I think Nick pretty much has to flip very soon, otherwise he's just going to get way behind.
Yeah.
Him having 2 Wind Secludeds out plus the Leviathan, if he has like a Heavenly Gust right here plus 1 more Regalia, I think flipping soon would be very strong.
Yeah, the flipping is just not an option here. I mean, flipping is only going to do a very small amount of damage because he just can't tap the Leviathan multiple times. It just doesn't have the mana for that. So he needs to have the Heavenly Gust. And again, it's just the one of.
He'd need the Heavenly Gust like this turn, and then to flip next turn. And he'd have to hope that Dane doesn't have something in hand.
There's the 3rd Wind Secluded. So if Nick ever does find time to flip this Prisia, it's not going to die. That's for sure. But he is very vulnerable right now to Heavenly Gust and Lumi's Judgment. He does probably have a Keen Sense in hand. He did discard 1 off the Guinevere, and he is still representing the 1 green source plus the Energize. And that just, it's very likely that he has 1, if not more than 1 in his hand. And I think he's got 7 cards in there. So Heavenly Gust and Lumi's Judgment, not too much of a concern for him. The real concern, I guess, would be if Dane had both of them. And I think on 6 stones, he has exactly enough mana to be able to cast both of them and take care of all these Wind Secludeds. But, Dane just not really feeling too much pressure. These Barrier of Shadows are just keeping him very much alive. And we'll see what other kind of threats he can develop. Captain Hook being one of them. A White Arthur could come down pretty soon, and that would definitely help a lot. And I just saw a quick peek of Nick's hand. I did see the Heavenly Gust in there, and I think he's saving it right now. I wonder if he drew it off that Wind Secluded.
No, he's had it all game.
Oh, wow.
He's had it since opening hand.
And he chose not to do it. He chose to Wind Secluded instead of. Interesting. I guess.
Yeah, I'm really surprised he Wind Secluded there. He played the rewriting, so Heavenly Gust would have had Torrent there too.
Yeah.
I am surprised he didn't play it.
I guess his thought process is, he's still at 3,000. He was at 4,000, only taking 10 here. He's not in any danger of losing the game, so he is trying to wait for that big Prisia turn where he just Heavenly Gust, flip, kill you all at once. He's not going to have time to flip Prisia and let it sit for a turn because of the shades, because of the space times, because of things like that. So that's kind of what Nick is waiting for. It's just Heavenly Gust and everything all at once. Final forfeit, target the shade, forcing the shade to pop now. I'm guessing that's so that he can try and keep as many wind secluded alive as possible if he does decide to flip Prisia. And this is also torrenting his Heavenly Gust before flip. So because of the Energize, he is going to have enough mana to Heavenly Gust, flip, attack, and then do everything that he wants to do. But he doesn't have lethal represented. Depends on how many Regalia he has in his hand here.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If he has sandbag some Regalia, that would be a little bit different. I guess it doesn't look like he has Regalia in hand. I think he was just setting up a spinning miss with Torrent.
Could be setting up, yeah.
He was afraid maybe the shade plus maybe a space time would have killed. Oh, okay. He's actually doing the Heavenly Gust now.
And that does play into the seal. He does have the Keen Sense for it, but that is going to eat up his Energize and then kind of take away his power turn here. If Dane does have a Death Scythe, he can just play it next turn, and that's going to again stall out the plans for Nick here. And we are down to 8 minutes left in time, and Nick is not very close to winning this game. And I'm not really sure what he's thinking of to try and get through here in the next 8 minutes.
I don't really know what that line does. He can spinning miss here if he has an Izanagi in hand, but Izanagi doesn't hit addition, so
it gets the Captain Hook and pushes 14. But yeah, it's just this control deck is just so. It's almost kind of scary, right? Because if Dane does just kill the Izanagi naturally, like he doesn't use Bear Magic to do it, like if he goes like Shade, Space Time, and kills the Izanagi, then Dane gets his Captain Hook back, and that is like probably worse for Nick than anything that could happen.
Yeah, that Captain Hook early, just taking him off the 2 stones with the 2 barriers out. I mean, it just put Nick in a really bad spot. I would have Heavenly Gusted earlier with just the 2 wind secludeds out, and just tried to flip as soon as I could, probably.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was thinking of as well. So to address chat, Nick is first seed, and the only thing is there's only 116 people at this event, so there's only 1 paid invite. So if Dane wins, then whoever is in the finals with him gets a paid invite. Nick is on the win and in for a paid invite. He does not get a paid invite if he loses. Hardcast Frigg. That's going to get back a Seal and a Shade, it looks like. And Seal of Wind and Light. Very, very strong here. And yet, Dane just has a blocker. Obviously Nick can flip and declare attacks, but when your God Art and your flip both cost 4 mana. But I thought it was pass down for invites. Yeah, you pass down to the next bracket. So it will pass down to whoever else is in the finals and look at seeding. And then it'll pass down to whoever's in top 4 and look at seeding. But because it's not getting past the finals, it doesn't look at seeds.
I can't think of too much that Nick can do here. He's in a pretty bad spot. The Hydro helps. The Hydro helps some.
Well, I don't think it does. It costs 4 mana to use that card.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I think the spinning myth gets sealed every time, and then this gets Keen Sense. He has to have a Keen Sense, and this is where he can start mining a comeback, because this is where a Frigg comes in and he's able to get back some of the stuff that he's been losing. If he really doesn't have another Keen Sense in his hand, I find it very questionable that he discarded it on turn 1. Like, I'm trying to think like what his other cards would have been that he felt so necessary keeping. Okay, so there is the Keen Sense. That is going to resolve the spinning myths, and that should be. I mean, it should be a Frigg, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's still slow, like he finally got that in there, but
he doesn't have any additions in his graveyard.
It gets back to Heavenly Gust. It's his only Heavenly Gust in his entire deck, so he needs, and he's probably going to energize it right here. While Dane's tapped out, he probably energizes the Heavenly Gust. That's the safest play. If he wants to try and milk more value off of it, he can wait until next turn.
He doesn't have 3 will though, right? He only has 2.
He has 2, yeah. So he's trying to Heavenly Gust. Heavenly Gust only 2.
Oh yeah, Heavenly Gust, yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking that he really needs to clear these Barrier of Shadows to try and get through with lethal here. And so the only question is, does he cast it right now with his energize, or does he wait until next turn and he tries to go, play a card, energize, flip, kill you? I think it's just too sketchy leaving, letting Dane untap, really. So I think you play it now. And then it's still scary because you're at 2,000 life and you're so any removal can just kind of come in here and just clear it up.
He just plays the Tama instead.
Yeah, and that's going to allow Dane to untap, and if he finds another counterspell, that's going to make it even more difficult for this Heavenly Gust to go through. But he does have 6 stones now and an energize, so there is a lot of opportunity for him to be able to flip and still do things with his mana. But it's just nowhere near lethal, and we've got 3 minutes left on the clock.
Yeah, and I haven't seen his hand, but I bet Dane has quite a few cards.
He is feeling very comfortable here. Oh, I thought he was getting back the shade, but no, he just has shade in his hand. He got it back with a. Oh, that's a wind secluded. That's going to be really big. If an Abdul comes down here, that could be problematic.
Yeah, or I mean, even without an Abdul, that shuts off Izanagi's quite a bit.
Yeah. So right now, there's just no way that Nick can put together lethal, right? Because attacking and Goddarding just costs like 8 mana. You get 1 stone for flipping, 1 stone for attacking, so you need 6 mana. And he has it, and then the third attack will give him 2 mana after the fact, so he can. It's just so incredibly rough.
Yeah, he really needed to actually, I think, keep that Frigg on board. And he should have tried to just swing in with Frigg.
So the thing is, he can't allow both of these hits to go through, because then he's dead to World Flame Summoning.
And yeah, but I don't think you can play around World Flame Summoning right now. I think he should have kept them on board, and tried to swing in with the Frigg. And if Frigg got through, like if he didn't block with the Abdul, if Frigg got through, so he is only at 38, then maybe he could have chained a turn together where he played like a Death Scythe plus Heavenly Gust plus Flip, and that would be 14 plus Frigg plus Tama would be 18 times 2, it'd be 36. It would be still too short.
Yeah, it's still not enough.
But I think you kind of had to take that line and see what happened. Oh, he had another Tama, so he would have had lethal if he had another Regalia in hand, and if the Frigg plus the Tama. No, just the Frigg got through.
All right, there is a Heavenly Gust, and he has enough mana to flip here. But I mean, what do you do? Is there, if you just no, there's an Abdul, so you can't even like YOLO flip into an Izanagi.
Yeah, I mean he's just flipping right now, just saying, okay, I have nothing else to do. Like, let's see what answers you have. I seriously think keeping the Frigg on board would have been a lot better here. He should have swung with Frigg, and he would have said, hey, do you want to sack your Abdul to my Frigg? Which Dane probably doesn't want to do, and then he could have gotten the 800 in, and with the extra Tama, he would have had lethal if he had a Regalia in hand. But now he's just flipping, saying, hey, I have nothing else to do.
Yeah, so still has the Energize. I mean, there's nothing I think that Nick has to do here. He's going to get the Enter ability, target either a stone or his Tama. I mean, it has to be a stone, because the Tama is just going to die to a space-time anomaly. Or I guess there's 3 wind secluded, but he hasn't done his trigger yet, so he should probably do that.
Yeah.
They're addressing that now. So that's Abdul doesn't stop J Ruler Enter abilities, guys. And yep, there he goes. Gonna draw. I mean, I'm racking my brain for what options he has here. It looks like he really disrespected Barrier Shadows when building this list, because he only has the 1 Heavenly Gust in his 55. It's just such a meta mistake where you're really just focusing on beating other myths list, that you just kind of assume that other control decks won't make it. As like, you'll play against like 1, and then if you make top 8, you're not going to see it anymore. And unfortunately, Dane's just chilling here like, hey, what's up? Barrier of Shadows is a good card. And that's time.
So he has a final forfeit in hand. Maybe he should have
final forfeit of the Abdul.
Final forfeited the Abdul and just YOLO cycled on Cat. Just see what you hit. And then if he had hit the Izanagi for some reason, he still would have had 2 to God's Art. I don't know. It's just, it's pretty bad shape right now.
That's still only what 24 plus 20. That's only 4,400 damage. It could be 46. He could sack the Izanagi after attacking with the Pritzia, but there's still a space time engrave, so he still just dies. Like the
Yeah,
Pritzia still
yeah,
doesn't.
that's true. Well, he's got wind
Oh, he's
secluded.
got wind secluded, yeah.
He's got 3 of them. So
Maybe there's double Moonbeam in it. I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely not. I do think he missed a cycle here because he.
wait, like he might actually be doing this. Like he might be YOLOing on the cat because he
I mean,
just final forfeited.
I mean, maybe he's trying to Izanagi here. Maybe he doesn't got art. Maybe he just hydros the Izanagi and
Well,
then guarantees it.
there's no reason to final forfeit here if you're not going for an Izanagi because he has enough mana to like spinning miss with the energize. Like
He just energized the final forfeit.
Yeah, I know. So like if he's spinning the energize on the final forfeit, he must have a plan with the other two will. Like he's not just doing that, just to do it.
So I think what's happening here is he got the cycle on, and now he's declaring an attack and he's cycling his Tama, and in response to this, he's final forfeiting the Abdul.
Okay, but I think he's gonna hydro the Izanagi. That's what it is, to the top of the deck.
Did he ask his opponent for a response for the final forfeit and then hydro? Because the final forfeit resolves and then he hydros. That's what he's doing.
And then he hydros, and this is while the triggers on the stack on the
Prissy attack. Yeah. So, and this would be before blockers also, because we haven't gotten to the part where damage is dealt because we're still on the Prissy attack. So this is going to be an Izanagi, and that's just going to happen. There's nothing that Dane does here that kills this Tama 3 times over, I don't think. Is that going to be lethal, though?
That's what I was just trying to figure out. So, like, did he tap his Leviathan before on taps?
No, he was tapped out, and the barrier shadows were still there.
Yeah. So he can deal 12 with this attack, plus the Izanagi attack, which he get all 3 of them? Which would be 20.
Well, he's not getting the Izanagi attack because he doesn't have enough mana to Goddard. Just playing Izanagi.
Oh, that's right. But he did get all 3, which is nice. So his Izanagi is a 20-20.
Yeah. I mean, that is good, but how does that set up a lethal? Because this is turn 0, right? This is the turn where things go. So he's going to have to win the game next turn from 34, through whatever nonsense Dane is able to put up here. If any... I mean, I don't know. All right, before untap, turn into a bear. You win secluded that, or do you let that go? I think you have to win secluded because of World Flame summoning, and you cannot stop a World Flame summoning AoEing the board and like dealing 800 to face. You win secluded here.
Yeah, I almost think you'd let the Charlottes resolve, which I guess he did.
Yeah, it looks like he did, but I don't think you do because you can't include a World Summoning if he just does AoE board and then doesn't target Prisia.
Yeah, but then you still have your Prisia out though. But your
Prisia is only dealing 2,400 damage, and he's at 34, and Nick only has 1 more turn.
Yeah, but I mean, it depends on his hand, but I mean, I think this could have gone way worse.
Yeah,
he's doing another space time.
But yeah, if you do, I think you do have to I do think you do have to win seclude the Charlottes, because now all of these space times just have the potential like to kill your Izanagi or make you waste a win secluded. Where if you would just stop the bear magic, then you can let these space times resolve forever.
Yeah, but he could play the bear magic again.
Oh, it was from hand? I thought it was from grave.
No, it was from hand, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay, that changes things. Never mind. All right, so yeah, there's just no winning situation for Nick. Then he lets it go, or he lets it resolve.
At least if you win secluded the space times, like he doesn't draw more cards. But
yeah, that's true. And now we're down to 1 win secluded, and there are 2 Black Moonbeams in his deck, and that's a Fairy Sacred Vision. That's gonna eat up the win secluded refuge, and that's gonna open up the space time in the graveyard to kill the Izanagi. And if he has a Rune of Soul or a Black Moonbeam in his hand, and that's gonna kill the Prisia, and that is there's nothing that Nick is going to be able to do if
Yeah.
if he has. There's the
Yeah.
Black Moonbeam. 3 wind secludeds is not enough wind secluded refuges to stop this Alhama'at deck. Holy moly! And there's the space time. Says, give me back my Captain Hook. I'm gonna play Abdul now. Thank you very much.
He doesn't get it back because of Bear Magic, but
Oh, right. Yeah. Just play Shade. That's I'm at 4,000 life. I have a wins. Oh my goodness, that's brutal.
yeah, that turn was brutal. That turn was brutal.
Yeah, it just took so long because of that Captain Hook on 5. It just took Nick so long to be able to piece together this like inevitable, late game that Prisia can have, and just couldn't get there. And I think this is last turn. If the clock on the left is any kind of accurate, sometimes there is some kind of delay, but even if the clock isn't accurate, like there's just so little that Nick really has left here.
Well, I don't think there's any way Nick can win this from this point, especially with the clock being gone. That turn was just brutal.
Yeah. I mean, like, if we still had more turns in this game, there are a lot of frigs in his deck. He still has like 3 cards in hand. But, with the clock being an issue, again, had he conceded earlier game 1, this might not have been an issue. But I don't see how he scrapes out of this, especially if this is his last turn. I mean, you only get to give one thing swiftness, and your opponent's at 34, potentially 4,000. And like, how do you deal with that? Another thing is you only have 6 stones, so yeah, that's it. And Dane Patey moves on to his second finals in Forcible Grand Prix this season.
I'm glad we got to watch this match, though. It's fun to see this Al deck play out.
Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting list that kind of just builds up these incremental advantages. Instead of just playing things at instant speed all the time and being reactive, it's like, all right, I'm gonna develop something that like is going to be here for a while if you cannot find an answer. And like you see, Captain Hook on 5, Frigg on 6, Abdul on 7, like those kind of like the fact that they stayed around so long, like threatened lethal on Nick at a very early point in the game. And Nick's like, well, I have to just flip now. I have to like do all of my things, and he just got completely creamed on the crackback. That was absolutely insane.
And that's actually what happened to me when I was playing against this deck. I was playing Wind Secluded, but he plays so many space times and little spells that end up mattering a lot because you need certain cards for lethal against him, and you need to get lethal fast. So like it's hard to even win with Wind Secluded because he has so many small spells you have to counter, and then he hits you with the Black Moonbeam or something like that.
Yeah. So that's the end of that. And I guess to talk to some people messaging in chat, he can't banish Lave in response to Black Moonbeam. So if he banishes Lave in response to like the fairy, then he has no Leviathan anymore. And then before untaps, Dane can just Moonbeam the Prisia, and like it's an irrelevant point at that point. He either has a Moonbeam or he doesn't. There's not much you can do to beat it except for hope all your Wind Secluded survive. And I wonder if there was a potentially winning play for Nick if he had just allowed the Izanagi to die a lot earlier and just really tried to save all of his Wind Secludeds for the Prisia. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I understand where Nick was coming from. He stopped when he had 1 Wind Secluded left, and then a Fairy of Sacred Vision came down, and then the Moonbeam. So like, I think it's the Fairy of Sacred Vision that's really so unpredictable. Like you don't expect him to have some addition removal.
Yeah, but I mean, you do get to see your opponent's deck list, and he does side in a second one. So
Yeah.
at this level of play,
I understand what he's thinking. He's like, I got a 2020 Izanagi. If he lives, I probably have lethal next turn, and you can't blame him, I guess, for going for it at that point.
I think the Izanagi is kind of a moot point where whether or not it lives is kind of irrelevant. The Prisia has to Goddard, or else you do not win. Like 100% Prisia has to survive in Goddard. So if you take any line that has any remote amount of risk that the Prisia dies, even without the Fairy of Sacred Vision, there's a Moonbeam, a second Moonbeam in the sideboard of Dane. So double Moonbeam kills you at that point. I think you just let the Izanagi go like ASAP, and then you just focus on making sure that you can Goddard. But I don't know.
But even with the Goddard, he was like 1,200 short. Like he would have needed.
I mean, with a dead Prisia, he's 4,000 short. So
yeah. He's just in a bad situation either way.
Yeah, it's really tough.
I don't know if him keeping the Wind Secluded out was the better line or not. That's hard to say. But I understand the line he took of just trying to keep the Izanagi because that's like the clearest way you just win the game is if you get lucky and it survives, and Prisia survives. Like, but I'm not sure if the other line like has a better probability, but you still are in trouble either way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Captain Hook on 5, the one of Captain Hook in a 43 card deck, on 43 card deck on exactly 5 stones, just kind of catching you out there. That's pretty brutal.
Well, and he had the 2 barriers out, which made him feel comfortable enough to tap out and hook on 5. So like there just wasn't any pressure right then.
So going into the finals, I believe that the other side of the bracket was won by Nick, the 7th seed. Nicholas, shit. I'm going to try and pronounce his last name as soon as I get to read it again. As soon as I find it.
And what was he playing?
He was playing Priscilla Myths.
Okay, so it's going to be Al versus Priscilla Miss.
That is correct. And I do believe that means that Nicholas, I think it's all right, hold on. I'm just going to find it, because if I butcher his name on stream, I'm going to meet this man in real life, and I'm going to have to apologize to him, and I don't want to do this. All right. Navigating through Nicholas's very disorganized thread. There we go.
So I think LH actually has a very good shot in this one, depending on what the miss deck is.
Mm-hmm. Nicholas Demule, 7th seed, coming back up. I think Dane was 5th seed, and I'm trying to find Nick's list now and seeing if he has any interesting check choices in this list.
He's running the 4 hydros. He's running 3 decides, not 4. He has 1 horn main deck, which makes a little tiny bit of difference if it goes long. Get the 4 spinny miss.
2 wins included, 4 Guinevere. It looks very similar. Again, no Captain Hook in the main deck. There's one on the board, but he's going for the 1 Frigg main. So it's 4 Guinevere, 1 Frigg, 3 Tama, and then pretty standard across the board. Only 1 final forfeit, 1 Heavenly Dust.
One thing that's interesting is he's running a final breeze in the sideboard. I'm sure that's going to come in, but that would be interesting if that cuts him off for a turn.
Interesting.
When I was trying to build kind of to play against this deck of Danes, and I was testing like Valentina's Zealot, because if he can't counter that, then the space times and stuff don't matter too much.
But I don't even know what that card does. What is that card?
Valentina's Zealot is a 1-cost water resonator, and you can banish it, and your J ruler cannot be targeted for spells until end of turn or abilities.
That's what I thought it was. You run that in Priscia?
Yeah, I was running it in Priscia and testing it out mainly for decks like Dane, because you can play it. If they don't have a seal, then you just banish it immediately and then flip, and they can't target you with anything the rest of the turn. So then their space times, Black Moonbeams, all that don't matter. But it just wasn't good enough, especially because most decks are not like Dane's. Dane's got quite an unusual deck. But I do think that with the standard Priscia Mist deck, his best chance is to get like a win secluded early and just flip early in this game 1 and just try to take it that way. Game 2, his best bet might actually be that final breeze.
Yeah, I would agree. Talking to Rancord in chat here, wants to know what happened after Priscia attacked with the Izanagi. So Priscia declared an attack, and then on the attack declaration, Nick used Priscia's ability to put the Tama he had on the bottom of his deck to put the top card of his deck into the field. And he used Hydromonica to stack a card from his deck on top, and he stacked Izanagi. So Tama goes to the bottom, Izanagi comes out. Nick had used Final Forfeit earlier in the turn to make sure that Abdul had no abilities. So Izanagi was able to eat up all 3 resonators from Dane's side of the field. And then on Dane's turn, before untapped, Dane used Charlotte's Water Transformation Magic to turn the Izanagi into a bear. And then also before untapped, he used Space-Time Anomaly to try and kill the Izanagi that was a bear. And then Nick sacrificed one of his Wind Secluded Refuges. Then Dane untapped. Dane used a second Space-Time Anomaly to try and kill the bear again. And Nick again used a Wind Secluded Refuge to negate it, leaving Nick with only 1 more Wind Secluded Refuge left. Then Dane played a Fairy of Sacred Vision, killed the last Wind Secluded Refuge, used Space Time Anomaly to kill the Izanagi once and for all, then used Black Moonbeam to kill the Prisia, and that was that. Nick didn't have anything left on board, and that was pretty much game over because we were in time. So Nick only had one turn to win, so he conceded.
Yeah, and looking at Nick's deck list for this next game, it does not look like he has a very good matchup against his Zao deck. He is only running one Final Forfeit main, and that's his only answer to Abdul. Period.
I mean, one of the things that we saw with Dane's list in Texas was in the finals, it just kind of exploded on itself. Like he was just staring down, like a 6-card hand, and just every single card was just not useful in the situation that he was in. And that's something that, could happen here, where he doesn't find, the Barrier of Shadows on turn 1. He doesn't find the white sources for his Moonbeam Butterflies, These are, in a 43-card deck, when you only have 2 Ruined Soul and 1 Black Moonbeam, if Nicholas just flips Prisia and says, do you have Black Moonbeam? No? Okay, I kill you. Like, that's not an unreasonable line. There are a lot of, like, potential blowouts that could happen in this matchup, just based on how well Dane's deck just kind of flows and like what cards he draws. But in like an average game, I would have to say that Dane is favored. Yes,
that is true, but at the same time, he has the 3 Moonbeam Butterflies, plus he has the Death Size. He's got 2 Death Sights, I think 2 barriers, maybe 3 barriers. He's got 3 Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterflies, plus Black Moonbeam. Like, when you add all that together, if he's mulliganing for one of those cards, it's just like having 8 Regalia in like Ruler's Memorial's deck. There's a very, very good shot that he hits one of them.
That is true. But you also, as we saw in game 1 against Nick, you do need to find the white source early enough to make sure that you can Moonbeam Butterfly into the Barrier of Shadows. Because that is another liability that his deck has, playing 11 stones. Too.
In last game, I think he didn't hit a white source very early either. So that is an issue with his deck. Yeah, it was last game he passed turn and he had not had a white source yet. It was I think black green and blue black.
Yep.
So
did not find a white source until turn 5, and then we saw as soon as he found the white source, it was okay. Kill your Prisia through your double wind secluded, and then still like set up a dominating board presence by being able to find the Fairy of Sacred Vision to kill the wind secluded. So very well played by Dane, and it looks like we will be getting into the finals here momentarily because we do know that Nicholas Duelle is in the finals with him. I guess they're just doing photo ops and things of that nature. So we'll see what happens.
They're probably like letting each other look at the deck list a little bit too.
Yeah, that is true. Usually they do that on stream, but we'll see. And just looking more into the main board, looking at Nick's list here. I lost Nick's list. Hold on. What have I done? I'm not sure if the Horn is going to come in too much. I mean, thinking about game 1 against Nick Blandon, Horn would have been great because he kind of ran out of resources where he used his Heavenly Gust, he used like 2 Izanagis, he used his 1 Frigg, and he just like actually had nothing left in his deck to be able to win. So Horn definitely helps a lot there, but it is, I feel like, almost too slow because he only has the 1 Frigg, and that is like the win condition in the long game for Prisia, is it needs to play Frigg, get back threats, have Frigg die, play Frigg, get back threats, have Frigg die. If your get back Frigg plan is horning it back into your deck and then drawing it again, it's going to take you a while to be able to play multiple Friggs and actually generate advantage. So you're kind of just relying on any Izanagis you play to really get home. And if your opponent sticks an Abdul and your only out to Abdul is a single final forfeit, that's not a very reliable win condition for game 1. So I think that game 1 does go to Dane, but then the game 2, thankfully in Nick Duelle's list, we do have a second Heavenly Gust in the sideboard, and we do have a Captain Hook. And these are 2 cards that are very, very powerful against control decks because you can flip Prisia, get an early Captain Hook, and even if you get Black Moonbeamed like on the spot, just putting control down to 0 stones while you have a 10-10 to hit them in the face with, that's a very aggressive like start. And you still have Prisia's very powerful ruler side to kind of take control of the game. So second Heavenly Gust, second Captain Hook, third Keen Sense, things like that, just very powerful for this matchup.
Yeah, Captain Hook, if he lands it early, would be huge. But after about turn probably 4, like it's more just kind of a liability if you draw it.
Yeah, that's true.
but I don't. I think the Horn of Sacred Beast is more for other matchups, maybe even the Mirror more than
Yeah,
anything else. But it could play a role if it goes really long. I don't think his deck wants to go long anyway. Like game one, he's got if the deck goes past turn 4 or so, he's got a very low chance of winning it. Or I mean, if it's turn 4 or 5 and he doesn't have much pressure already, then his odds go way down. So
yeah.
I don't think the Horn take will do much in game one. Maybe after sideboarding, it would do
Eh,
more.
I think taking it out for a better card is how it's useful in sideboarding. But yeah,
Yeah, he kind of has to keep it in because of the Ruler's Memoria. And he's definitely going to rather side out Death Scythe rather than Horn. So he will leave it in. He'll probably actually bring the other Horn in. He's got another one in his sideboard. He'll probably take out a Death Scythe and bring actually he still has enough with the Heavenly Hydro Monica. So
yeah.
uh he'll probably leave one Horn in and just take out the Death Scythe.
I think I would still keep in one or two Death Scythe just because he is playing Guinevere and he is playing for Guinevere, unlike what Nick Blandon was playing. So you do actually get a lot of value if your Guineveres are able to stay alive. It's very difficult for the control deck to justify wasting removal because he doesn't play unseen pressure, right? So his only like way to kill the Guinevere is shade and space time anomaly. And you don't really want to waste your premium space time anomalies on Guinevere when you need to use those to fight through wind secluded refuges and kill Prisia. So I think that it's very possible that Guinevere's will get multiple activations, meaning that you do want to keep in at least some number of Death Scythe to just basically count as extra cards.
Yeah, there's not too much to sacrifice with Guinevere though. Like Thomas or Sacred Elves. Um, and if you, I mean, if you leave the Death Sights in, like, sure you could get more value from the Guinevere, but you could also just draw it at a time where it won't matter. The Horn of Sacred Beast still pumps Prisia, so you can still get the OTK if you draw it early. So it doesn't hurt that much there. So I don't know. I think I would take out at least two, if not all three, Death Sights.
Yeah, I think that I would take out two Death Scythe, and honestly, I would keep in one horn. I don't think I would side in the second one, but just I don't know. It's really hard to say because you definitely want to have a strong like late game, but you don't want to like ruin your ability to frig your graveyard back. Like you don't want to make your graveyard have 0 cards in it because you want those cards in there so you can frig. And actually, looking at the sideboard, very interesting. Nick doesn't go into 4 frig, which is typical for Prissy decks. He only sides in a second one. So he's only going to have access to 2 frigs post board. And typically, like the 4 wind secluded, 4 frig post board is how Prisia gives control an incredibly hard time. But with only 2 frig and 4 Prisia, we'll see if that's enough gas to actually make sure that he can get control of the game.
Yeah, I think his sideboard's actually weaker to control than even Nick's or the other decks we've seen.
Yeah.
So I think that's one reason he's gonna have a hard time on this. Like that final breeze seriously might be the card he wants in game two. He definitely wants to get Captain Hook out early if he can. That's his win, and then if he can land a juicy final breeze to shut Dane off for a turn to get a combo or something.
Final Breeze definitely has a lot of potential to just beat control decks when they're trying to play in your turn. No Wall of Wind in the deck in anywhere in any capacity, so it's something that in Swiss you always have to play around. But once you're in top 8, you have the luxury of just looking at your opponent's deck and saying, "Oh, there's no Wall of Wind. I never have to play around that card ever again." And that's actually kind of one of the dangers of just not having it in your list at all. Is when you do make top 8 and the deck lists become available, like the fear is no longer there, and it actually makes it a bit easier to play against you.
Yeah, and that's one thing about Nick having one of them that's kind of cool is the opponent still has to play around it even though it's a one of. In this deck, obviously he won't have to play around it at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like they're setting up now, looking at their opponent's deck lists, and we'll see how it goes. This could either be a win for Dane Petey, second place finish, which would put him in the exact same tier as legendary Anton Vahil, but we'll see.
Yeah, Nicholas is definitely wanting to. He's definitely wanting to draw a Sacred Elf, probably 2 Sacred Elves, like a Leviathan, a Death Scythe or a Horn, and probably a Wind Secluded as his opening hand. That would be pretty much what he wants to draw.
I think Nick just has to hope to turn on the gas and cross his fingers and hope that Dane doesn't have a response, or hope that the stones just don't line up properly for Dane, things like that. Uh, and yeah, it's pretty straightforward here. Either the long game goes heavily in Dane's favor, or the game ends on turn 2, turn 3. And there's a lot of ways for Dane to stop it, but he has to find them. So players look at the deck list now. Dane going to be very happy to see no Wall of Wind in the 55 of Nicholas. $43 cards, man. 43 cards. How do you get away with this? Someone explain this to me.
Well, and especially none of them are ancient Heartfelt Fire, so like, there's not much cycling either. So yeah, it's very interesting that he can fit 43 cards in the deck with only 2 ancient knowledges, the Sift, and still be performing.
Yeah. I think I guess because he is playing the Rune of Souls and the Kaguzumi Butterfly, he wants to have as many options as possible in his deck. I mean, you see a lot of 1-ofs, especially in the Resonator area, and then just like a couple 2-ofs in the Ancient Magic area.
And the Space Times do draw a bunch of cards too, so like he does see a lot of cards.
It's just interesting that you find a 43 card deck doing so well against Prisia, when against Prisia in particular, you only get to draw, like you only get to see 5 or 6 cards before you lose the game. So those 5 or 6 cards that you see, like at least one of them has to be useful. So when you increase your deck size to 43, you're making your deck less consistent. And especially with 11 stones, you need to, like, all of them are black, sure, but you need to see white and green to cast your seals and your Moonbeam Butterflies. You need to find blue to cast your space-time anomalies. It's just, there's a lot of things that can go very wrong if you hit the wrong side of variance, but it has been working well for Dane. Even when he's getting unlucky, he's able to just survive long enough to be able to pull things back when things finally do go his way.
Yeah, but another thing also is I think this tournament is probably pretty low on Prisia with like the Jacks and the Maribella Prisias. There was only like 20 or 24 Prisias at the tournament. I bet probably 20 of them were probably Prisia miss.
Probably, yeah.
So I think against Jack Giant Prisia, he would have a much harder time because he does have a lot of instant answers, but he doesn't have a lot of instant answers that would take out a Jack by itself or take out a Maribella by itself. He'd have to chain multiple things together.
That is actually interesting. He doesn't play any Black Lightning in his main deck.
Yeah, and he also if you like were Prisia and you turned to played a Jack and just swung at him, unless he has a Charlotte's Water Transformation Magic, like Space Time wouldn't matter because you're still getting hit and still getting a Giant out. Like, I think he'd be in way more trouble against a Jack list.
Yeah, you just have to hope that you would find a Bedivere on time. That's the only out I think he has to that. Or Captain Hook, put it back in the hand. 2 mana, going for Space Time. Oh boy. An aggressive use of the Keen Sense, keeping the Sacred Elf alive. That potentially sets up a Spinning Myths play here.
Yeah, I actually kind of like that. It keeps him off another card too. Keeping your elf out early, plus keeping him off another card, and being able to use that elf right after he played it, so you got some value off the 1 extra will.
Yeah.
Since we know he's not playing Wall of Wind anyway, I kind of like that play.
I think it's interesting that he. I think it's a good play that Dane chose to space time at sorcery speed instead of waiting to like pre-untap. Oh my goodness, that is
he had
exactly not what he wants to see. And I'm surprised that Nicholas even went for the flip there because he's not representing lethal. He's only got 12, 14, 16, 18, 36. So he'd be putting Dane at 4. And as we saw in the last round, the shades just kind of add up over time. But
yeah, I don't blame him at all though. If he can get him down to 4, and says like, hey, you got to answer my Prisia on your 3 will. Like, if he spent his 3 will killing Prisia, then all he's got to do is swing with his Tama and, maybe something else. Like, I don't blame him for going for it at all.
And because...
he knows Black Moonbeam's only a 1-of in the deck, so he pretty much had to have it in hand.
And because he used the space-time at sorcery speed, he was tapped out, so he couldn't use Rune of Soul to find Black Moonbeam. It had to be exactly Black Moonbeam, and he just had it. So what do you do? but I do think that that was correct on the part of Nicholas, as you are saying. Putting it up to 36 and then saying, well, if you have it, you have it. You have a 43 card deck. You have one Black Moonbeam. Play it. Like, if you have it, you have it.
Yeah,
Because he can't afford to go to the long game, like we were saying earlier.
well, even if he doesn't have it, if he's having to spend space time or something like that, if he's tapping out just to kill Prisia, then like the chance of you drawing another Tama like he just did would have been lethal.
Yep.
So I think going for it there is the best thing you could do for game one with these deck lists. And he got very lucky that there was no barrier or any or a Death Scythe turn one from Dane.
Yeah, and just interesting, very interesting, just having that Black Moonbeam. I think it was a lose-lose position for Nick. You can never afford to just call more stones there. So
it actually, when I played Dane in top 8, this is like exactly how our game one went. I actually had lethal though, and I flipped early. He had nothing on board, and I was just like, okay, he either has the Black Moonbeam or he doesn't, and he had it then too. I mean, you just got to go for it.
yeah, no, that's that seems correct. Oh, that's brutal. Gonna take a stone out too.
Yeah, he's definitely gonna pick stone.
It's gonna draw him a card as a consolation prize, but being on 1 mana against Alhama'at 4, that's just, oh boy. Yeah, I don't think there's anything that Nick does here, but I mean, you do have 90-minute rounds in the finals, so he can afford to just take as much time as he wants to try and piece together this win. Just kind of feel out Dane a bit more, try to understand his play style, figure out things like that.
And to be honest, I don't know how much Nick's played this matchup, but at this point, when your Prisia dies and you try to flip early and then he destroys his stone, like you kind of want to play a few turns just to get your bearings back, so you don't go on tilt. Like you kind of just want to take a few turns to say like, okay, that happened. Like I'm not gonna win this game, but like let's just try to figure out what I want to do next game.
You just kind of autopilot your turn and just be like, I'm just gonna move my hands a little bit while my brain recuperates from the fucking I just received.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I wouldn't be like I wouldn't be surprised if Nick's just taking a few turns, like to see what happens, but more just to like kind of compose himself and get back in it.
Yeah. And this Frig here, not too bad of a pickup. Going to get back probably the Keen Sense, potentially the Spinning Myths. It's going to represent 800 damage on board and see what he can piece together, really. And I don't think it's going to be much, to be fair. 5 stones for Alhama'at now to Prisia's 2. I think that space time is removed from the game. And Captain Hook, you draw a card, so that's good. And this is just the power of this kind of deck where you use Alhama'at strictly for the 0 mana spells, and everything else you just play on curve. You just Shade turn 2, all right, Captain Hook turn 5. You're just putting out threats, and then you still just have like options available. Obviously now he like truly is tapped out, but Prisia has an 8/8 and 0 stones. Like, go ahead, buddy. What do you got?
Yeah, and I seriously think part of this, like, I don't think Nick's just trying to buy time because they have so much time. I think part of it is seriously he's just trying to like kind of get his head back in the right space for the next game.
Yeah, and you're just seeing what you can piece together. You do still have Izanagi's. I mean, Izanagi's a very good card. Dane has not yet played an Abdul, so I mean, if Izanagi ever does get to come down, it's going to be a pretty relevant threat. It's just a matter of, does Dane have Bear Magics in his hand? Does he have Abduls? Then there. Okay, see now, this is the point where the game is over in my mind.
Now, his only main deck answer for Nick, the only main deck answer was one final forfeit.
Yep.
That was it. So, yeah, I mean, I think he could have easily have scooped earlier, but I do think he's just taking a few turns. Like, I really think that's the only reason he's even playing still. Is I think he's taking a few turns just to kind of be like, okay, I've lost this game. What am I going to do next game? Like, what should I do to draw? Like, he just kicked my butt.
Yeah, he's just looking for options. Yeah, okay. I mean, you have a 7-card hand. You can kind of like think through like whatever possible ways you have to get out of the situation. And Nick, once he sees the Abdul, that's where the game ends. Because if there's no Abdul, then okay, you can Izanagi, And if he doesn't have Bear Magic, it's actually really hard for him to kill Izanagi. So like you can actually win the game off the back of an Izanagi, despite the fact that your Prissy is dead and you've been captain hooked. But yeah, once the Abdul comes down, it's over. Especially when you don't have any final forfeits in hand. Like
Yeah.
you're about to take 16 next turn, probably. Like it's just too much.
He could also have just been given Dane some time to say, hey, you know, I've already got a paid trip. Like,
just like let him throw for you, yeah.
yeah, I'm hungry for dinner, so I'm just gonna. No, I'm just kidding. I know Dane. Like he's very competitive. He's trying to win it right now just for the pride. Like
Yeah.
He's gonna play as hard as he can just to win it.
He's on Team Break, correct?
Team Break, yeah.
Yeah. Up and coming team of this season, doing particularly well. I think they're actually probably the second most number of tops behind OTG.
They haven't gone to hardly anything either.
Yeah, they've just been doing very well when they do show up, you know?
Yeah, they have a very good locals. They just play with each other a lot, and all the guys are really cool and they're good.
The only people I actually know that are on that team are Dane and Brick Jennings. I don't even know who else is there. They're mostly they mostly go to like the West Coast events, right?
I'm not sure where they're based out of. I know the whole team went to Richardson, and I know
Yeah.
the whole team I think went to Arizona. Or I mean, at least a few of them did.
Yeah.
I don't think they've really been to anything else. I know Brick Jennings like joined after he won though, so he wasn't on the team when he did win.
Gotcha.
But they are really good players and they're nice guys too.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, we went out the night before. The night before I played top 8 against Dane, we went out and we were drinking a little bit, and I was telling Dane, I go, I know exactly what my strategy is. And he goes, what's that? And I was like, I'm either going to order you a bunch of drinks or you just need to hurt yourself and not make it to the event tomorrow.
Yeah, it definitely does seem like a list that I would not want to be playing
Yeah.
myths against at all.
My deck, I was running a Destructive Assault main deck.
Yeah.
And that made me feel a little bit better against the deck because I'm like, if he gets an early barrier or an early Death Scythe, I might just be able to kill it and flip unexpectedly and steal one. But it is a very scary deck to play against.
Definitely, Nicholas is feeling that right now going into game 2 here. And again, one of the main things looking out of board is that Nicholas only has 2 frigs, where typically Prissy decks will have 4 frigs. And even with 4 frigs, Nick Blandon was not able to come out with a win in game 2, so just a little bit more of a disadvantage. But on the upside, we do have a second Heavenly Gust in the sideboard and a Captain Hook, which could just be the kind of like oomph that Nicholas needs to take an early lead.
Yeah, I feel like in this matchup, you have to decide which way you're going to go against control with Prisia. You either have to go more for the one-turn kill, or you have to go more for a longer game. And I think Nicholas kind of split the difference between the two, and I think that makes it a little bit weaker. Like only having not having 4 frigs to bring in, and not having more J ruler support like a Destructive Assault or more Heavenly Gust or something like that. It just makes him kind of a little bit on both paths, and I think that's just going to hurt him, as in he won't be too strong in either.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel like that's going to end up being the case here. I think that in particular, Dane's list is very good at dealing with the more long game oriented builds, where it's a bit weaker against the J ruler builds. And again, it's just because he's playing 43 cards. He only has 2 Moonbeam. He only has 2 Rune of Soul. He's really just relying on the Barrier Shadows to kind of carry him through the early game, and not so much the Black Moonbeam to shut down the ruler strategies. Whereas if it does come down to the long game, he has his own resonators to play to like help combat the board. He has Betavirs to deal with Nagi. He has Captain Hook to like make sure that he's ahead on tempo. Like he just has so many options to actually develop like threats. Whereas a typical Alhama'at list, the kind that uses like Steam Explosion and Schrodinger's observation as a win condition, that is a lot weaker to the more frig based perceived versions because there's almost infinite counter spells because frig just keeps getting back Keen Sense and things like that. So I think Dane's list would be a lot better against the longer deck. So the fact that Nicholas is kind of dipping into the more aggressive strategy is probably a little bit better for him, but I still don't think that it's going to like make up the difference here.
Yeah, and I think that's the only reason Final Breeze might be a good card in this. I don't think it's a really strong card in this matchup, but the fact that it does favor a little bit more the aggression, the aggression in the early flip, uh, is one reason why it might be good here. Him being at 46 is big though, because it takes away a lot of the one turn kill potential.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just no regalia from the side of Nicholas, and that's just really not what he wants to be seeing right now. You know, he needs to be able to push out this early damage, even if he's flipping on turn 4, turn 5. In order to push together 4,000 damage, he needs to have these regalia, and he just hasn't been able to find them yet.
Yeah, and he drew his Captain Hook. He's
Oh
got
no!
it in hand, so that's really bad. I think now not having any regalia, he's gonna have to just say, okay, this is gonna be a really long game. How can I play the longest game?
Yeah, does have a wind secluded and a heavenly gust, so he will be able to piece together some ruler shenanigans if he can find them.
I don't like sacking the Gwen at all right there. Like
Yeah.
I would almost rather just sack the Sacred Elf actually, because like you know the game's gonna go really long.
So, in my opinion, there's exactly 0 reasons to sack the Guinevere before untap, because like it's not going to untap. Why do you need your Guinevere dead before you untap your stones? Now you don't have like a keen sense available to like stop if he does anything. I think you untap first. I think you play wind secluded because you're going to play wind secluded. Then you look at your options, and then maybe you sack a Guinevere if you still don't like your options. But I think that just sacking the Guinevere off the bat is a little bit incorrect, and I think a lot of players do that, where you get so used to sacking Guinevere before untap because you're sacking like an elf token or something that you just do it all the time. But if Guinevere is sacking herself, just wait, just untap first, and then like that way you have more options available. You know?
Oh, absolutely, and you could see what you drew off when secluded. I would understand though if he also sacrificed the elf, because I mean the elf, if the game goes really long, is not going to be maybe as important as another card right now.
Yeah. I mean, if he does have rewriting laws, maybe he's looking to ramp into a Captain Hook here. Maybe that's the card he's for, but he ends up discarding the Captain Hook with the Guinevere. So obviously, definitely not the.
He is running 3 rewriting laws, so he could have thought about that a little bit.
Here's a space-time anomaly. Is that after the wind secluded hits the board, or while it's on the chase? It is going to be targeting the interesting. I guess it's just the end of turn trigger. Or, like it's the end of the turn. Nick or Dane wasn't going to do anything else with the mana, so he's just getting that out of the way.
He might be doing it on his turn before recovery. I'm not sure.
Also a possibility. I'm actually a little surprised that he went for the elf instead of Guinevere. I feel like the Guinevere is what you want to prioritize here, and because he's already at like 4 mana.
Yeah, and I think
he
just played that Guinevere. Like I think if he had done it at the end of turn, I don't know. I'm getting kind of confused.
He played a Leviton after the fact, so I guess it wasn't at end of turn. It was after the Swiftness trigger already resolved onto the Guinevere. So
okay.
I'm not sure what the timing was there that Dane was looking for, but it seems that it gave Nicholas an opportunity to draw a few extra cards.
Yeah, he definitely should have done in response to the trigger on Gwen, I guess.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Gonna grab a Barrier Shadows here. A Fairy gonna take out the Winds Occluded. Doesn't want to play any games. Yeah, I guess Barrier feels a little irrelevant here. It's not. You don't really need it to stop the Prisia. Like he's got enough mana where it's just going to be a problem no matter what. Really, you just want to make sure that the Black Moonbeam is going to connect, and this kind of telegraphs either a Rune of Soul or a Black Moonbeam in Dane's hand. And it's gonna, even if he doesn't have either of those cards, the fact that it telegraphs it so heavily means that Nicholas probably isn't going to flip this turn. He's going to look to maybe go for an Izanagi instead, and that's good. And that's just exactly probably what Nick wants here, or what Dane wants.
Okay, he's final breezing his own Leviton here.
That's a good play. I like that a lot. Because he's going to flip, and then, Millennia Bond. Leviton stays on the field. It's going to draw him a card, and now he still has the Ancient Magic counters to be able to Black Moonbeam.
Yeah, but right now, all he can do is Black Moonbeam. I almost think, yeah, you got to flip and just say, do you have it or not?
I mean, he has to have it. There's no way, right?
Well, I mean,
Wait, it's very first. Oh god. Okay, he's Rune of Soul. Never mind. I thought he was just moonbeaming. Yeah, you have to. What is going on here?
he sacked. I'm not sure. Was he doing it in
What?
response to the flip?
He's searching Black Moonbeam. He's
Yeah,
showing his opponent that he's searching Black Moonbeam.
Was he
Okay,
like,
so
Rune of Souling in response to the flip?
I
Or
believe so, yes. And then he banishes Leviton for Imperishable, but he forgot to tap Leviton, so that's going to miss some damage. So Prisya is Imperishable right now, so even if he Black Moonbeams it, it's going to survive. But because he didn't tap the Leviton, it no longer represents lethal. It's only 14, 16 damage. I don't think it was lethal either way. It's only 12, 14. Dane's at 46 because of the shade earlier. This is nowhere near lethal. He would have to have.
yeah, it wasn't near lethal. I don't know. I think there was a little bit of misplaying on both sides. I don't think he should have sacked the Leviton until the very sacred vision popped.
I completely agree with that.
But I really do like Dane not using the very sacred vision, because like if he had used it earlier, right when he played it, he knows he's gonna pop a Wind Secluded, but if he used it earlier, it makes Friggs better.
Yeah.
So I like him not using it until he's for sure moonbeaming. But I do think that Nick kind of misplayed and shouldn't have sacked his Lave.
I think he should have tapped his Lave before he sacked it. I think he should have waited until the Fairy of Sacred Vision before he sacked it. And I think he should have played this Death Scythe before he attacked. Oh, I guess the Death Scythe was probably off of the stone draw. Yeah, that makes the most sense. So then end of turn is going to happen. We're going to kill the Wind Secluded. We're going to no longer have Imperishable. Now the Moonbeam's going to come down. And at 1600 life, that's pretty healthy. But yeah, he had nowhere near lethal there, and he was just going for it. He says, "I just want to put your life total low, and then sure, Prissy can die." I mean, when you have a hand of like double Leviton, like you kind of have to just aggressively throw your ruler out there just to get damage in, and then hope that Izanagi finishes the job. But I mean, look at the life gain here. Look at the removal. This Guinevere is not going to be long for this world. Izanagi's only going to be 14. So the fact that Shade's going to put him up to 22, that's just not enough damage. And I think that, we've seen what happens when Dane gets to have 6 and 7 stones. He just takes complete control of the game at that point, no matter how many Izanagis you have. That's a Rulers Memoria. Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's I think Nick's in a really bad spot here. I don't blame him for flipping and just seeing if the Moonbeam was there. But I think he went about the flip a little bit worse than he could have.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't like flipping when your rule is guaranteed to be dead. And I think that the fact that he butterflied for the Fairy Sacred Vision just means that the Moonbeam has to be there, I think you had a Guinevere out. You can just, chill. You had Tama in hand. You just play Tama, sack it to Guinevere, draw. You get to see 3 more cards. You get to look for, a Frigg to get back your Final Breeze to actually set up a game-winning turn. And he just, felt like going for it, I think, too early. I think if he had waited longer, there was a higher percent chance of winning than just running into a Moonbeam that has to be there.
Yeah, and he definitely could have played a Tama before he flipped too, and just seen what the top card was. And then if he drew the Death Scythe off that, it would have given more reason to flip.
But it seems sloppy to me. I don't think it matters. I think he would, because we have gotten to this point in the game, and Dane's deck is just so good past turn 3. It's so good at beating Prissy at this point in the game. And I'm sure that Nicholas doesn't have any experience playing against this kind of Alhama'at, because this Alhama'at list has only shown up once before, and it was piloted by his opponent. It's just not something that most Alhama'at players, it's not the style of Alhama'at deck you typically see as a Prissy player.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think this Al deck's weak against Zero and some other control decks, but against Prissy, it's very good, especially because it has so many little little tiny advantage things like space times, the shades gaining the extra life. Like the extra life off one shade puts you out of OTK range most of the time,
Yeah,
and so it buying an extra turn's usually very big. And I just think this deck's very good against Prisia.
yeah, absolutely.
Miss in particular, I think Jack Giant would have a much better time against it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a big part of just how resilient Jack is against Abdul. It just doesn't care about Abdul, whereas Abdul really just shuts down myths like almost by itself.
Well, and if you're playing LH against Jack Giant, like I was saying earlier, you have to have spells that kill something
Yeah.
like in the turn, like, and they have to be quick cast. So like if a Jack gets played turn 2 or turn 3 and then swings, like a space time's not going to do it. Like
Yeah.
you need something that's going to kill it.
I think Jack is largely just a better against control matchups, but because, like we said before, the myths is just so much more popular. Like you can't play Jack into the mirror very well, etc., etc. Calling a stone, no triggers, nothing that really. I mean, you can make a Tama fly. That's fine. Calling us. Okay, so he wanted to represent Keen Sense. That's why he called the stone first. This is going to be a seal, and this should be the Keen Sense. Is there another seal? Oh, there's no more white sources. So the one lone white source holding it down for Dane. I don't even know what turn he called that, but it very, very by itself. And then that's going to be a Frig. Going to get back probably looking at the Captain Hook. He can lock his opponent off of white with the Captain Hook. Definitely a consideration.
Yeah, I actually like maybe grabbing the Captain Hook. He's got the 2 rulers out already,
Yeah.
and he's got a Hydro, so he could always search for another Frig.
I think this is where he needs to start. Oh, he's not. He's going for the Guinevere and the myths. I think he just wants to find his second Frig and just try to start going infinite with the Frigs. Maybe that's the kind of gameplay I was looking for now. It doesn't see.
I don't really understand the Gwyn play because you're probably just going to sack and draw more cards with Gwyn, and I think drawing the Captain Hook would be pretty good. So like, why not just cut out the middleman and get the Captain Hook?
I think.
Especially because you can search for a Frig off the Hydro anyway.
Yeah, I think the idea here is that the Captain Hook isn't particularly strong here. So he's going to get the call on the stone. And if he calls a white stone here, then you really can't lock him off of color. Like with the current stones, you can bury a white source, which would be really good. But if you can't play the Captain Hook right now. So if he just calls a stone, it's a white stone. Then you just put 2 white stones on top. He calls a stone. Oh, look, it's a white stone. And then he's on white for the rest of the game. And as we can see, he's having absolutely no problem playing the game on only 1 white stone. So it just doesn't seem like it's particularly powerful. Would rather find the Guinevere, just try and put more cards in his hand and start going Frig infinite.
Yeah, that's true. I was just thinking that Captain Hook's more impactful than a Gwyn would be, especially because you don't have, besides just doing Frig loops, you don't have that many threats in the deck.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I could definitely see Captain Hook being stronger, like because you're not going to just because you're not playing it this turn, it will be stronger in like 2 or 3 turns as a 10/10. But I don't know. I also value Guinevere very highly against control decks just because they are oriented around running you out of cards, and then Guinevere just prevents them from being able to do that.
Yeah, but I was thinking if he got a Captain Hook and he played it and took him off the white source for 2 turns, and then he has to kill the 10/10, then you just Hydro and Frig, and you're pretty safe because there's no seals.
So well, he wasn't able to play the Captain Hook this turn. He could get it back right now, but he wouldn't be able to play it because he had just cast the Frig. So
yeah, Dane, it had to be next turn. Yeah,
but yeah. But as we can see, Dane called a white stone. So now you Captain Hook, you put both white sources back, and then he calls a stone and is immediately back on a white source. So that's kind of why it's not as impactful. If he could play the Captain Hook this turn, then yeah, I would say Captain Hook is stronger. But now from now on, it's just like you're just giving him infinite Alhama'at counters, basically. I'm not sure. I don't think there is a winning line at this point. This is really where Dane takes control of the game. But I could see arguments either way for Guinevere versus Hook.
He would just have to draw his Frigs and just start really getting a lot of value right here because the Frigs are bigger than the Shades, but I don't think there's much chance he wins it. I just think that that's pretty much the only way is if he has to hope that he draws at least like one or two more frigs and just starts playing them.
Yeah.
He only runs what,
Two.
three total or two total?
Two
Okay, two.
frigs.
Yeah, so so I don't even think that plan works.
He did hydro here, and Dane is tapped out. So whatever card he hydroed, I have to assume he should have got the frig, right?
Well, he's got a spinning miss and an Izanagi in his hand.
Okay. I
So
think frig is more valuable at this point. Okay, I don't agree with this, but what?
yeah, I don't know why he got rid of that when secluded. Um,
He's stopping him from gaining life. But that's only 11. He has a Guinevere, though. So he plays Guinevere, calls a stone, and hits him for 15. That's lethal. Okay, that was really smart. I did not see that. I did not see that line
I
at
didn't
all.
see that either. I thought he was just gone.
Yeah, I didn't see Dane tap out. I don't know why Dane tapped, but once Dane tapped out, that's when that's absolutely the correct play.
What did Dane tap out on?
I have no idea. That's why I'm so confused. Like Dane only played a shade, and I'm like, wait a minute, why does he have 7 mana tapped?
He played a World Flame summoning. That's what it was.
Oh, so he played World Flame, got back the shade, and played shade. Yeah, oh man, that was exactly what he needed. Just nice play from Nicholas there.
Yeah, that was big.
I think that was really greedy from Dane to tap out there. I mean, it is still a Pressia deck.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's what it was. Him doing the shade plus the World Flame was a little too much.
Yeah. I guess he felt safe, behind the shade, being able to put him up to 2,000 and knowing that there's no way he really loses Nagi. But you already know there's a Guinevere in hand because it came back from the Izanagi. So like it's just the wind secluded is what really sealed it, and there's 4 wind secluded. So because the Hydro gets to get any card that you want, that's really where it comes off. I don't know why Dane tapped out. That was what I didn't even like see that he tapped out. And as soon as I'm like, wait a minute,
I didn't realize either. I thought he pretty much had it.
Yeah.
I think he had a lot of cards in hand too. So, but I mean, Nick saw that line, and that was the game. So
yeah, that's part of the power of Hydronomica. Is like he has all these pieces together in the 6-card hand, and he's like, oh, you finally tapped out. All right, I need 15. Well, here we go.
It's been really weird though that Dane, in all the games we've watched of his, he has not been getting Abduls very early at all, except for that one game he had in the opening hand, and it ended up getting Wall of Winded.
Yep.
He's not finding them very early, which I think is making a big difference in these games.
Well, he's only playing 2 Abduls in his 43 card deck, so that definitely plays a part.
But he has one inside, I think. So I think he's playing 3.
Yeah, what Saito's saying in chat is that Dane should have just shaded itself. That is 100% correct, because then he would have gone 2,000 and he wouldn't have died to the Izanagi there.
Yeah.
I don't think that he was aware that he could target it itself. And also, he targeted the Izanagi with the shade, and then just like the wind secluded, like the judge was even like adding the life total back, and then he was like, no, wind secluded, you don't gain life.
So
Nicholas
this
definitely paying the most attention
might
here.
help Nick out some because, like I said, Dane is pretty competitive, so he probably took that kind of hard.
Yeah.
It looks like his opening hand is an Abdul, a Shade, a Moonbeam Butterfly. I'm not sure what he just pitched, but he does have
he pitched the World Flame.
Oh yeah, the World Flame. I think that's what it was. So he has an Abdul, a Shade, and a Moonbeam Butterfly.
I actually like keeping World Flame in this matchup. Maybe I'm incorrect on this, but I feel like you can cast it on like turn 3 and just put them back a stone. That's something that would have been.
If they have counter magic though, and they counter that, it takes up all your ancient magic counters, and you're usually tapped out, and you're in a lot of trouble then.
Yeah, it's probably not correct to keep it then. I'm sure you can just draw into a copy of it. Like you want to cast it for 0 mana if at all possible. I'm not sure exactly what would come. And yet no Wall of Wind means, oh, wow, that's a shade and not a That's a shade and not an Abdul. I definitely thought Abdul was coming down here because he is representing a spitting myth potentially, and instead he just goes for the shade. And I guess he's not too worried if an Izanagi comes down right now. It's just 11.
I think also like maybe Dane, like we didn't see very much anti Prisia in his hand, like very many cards that are good against Prisia for this exact reason. Like
Yeah,
I think he was like, well, the shade will if he does flip and deals a lot of damage, the shade gets me 600 life. The Abdul doesn't do too much right now.
yeah. I don't know. I feel like you play Abdul turn 2, shade turn 3. That's a little bit.
So
I don't know.
so like I don't understand why he did not play that Regalia last turn. Like if you have it in hand, why not just put it out on the board?
You try and see what your opponent has first. I mean, it wouldn't have been lethal because of the shade. It would have been at 46, and you won't be able to do 40 damage. But now here's the Death Scythe to make sure that he's not dying. And I think this has to be where the Abdul comes down, right? The question is, does the Abdul get final breezed? Is the one turn of putting him off of duel enough to, threaten the Izanagi? He's actually not casting the Abdul. He does have 2 Ancient Magic Stones, so he can threaten whatever colors his heart desires. Gonna just be a Tama. He does have a seal, right? Dane?
I didn't see a seal. He has
No, he has a Moonbeam Butterfly.
Moonbeam Butterfly. Yeah, not a seal though.
Hmm.
I'm not sure what he's planning here. Like maybe he has an ancient knowledge or something.
He also hasn't elected to use this shade yet to stop the Guinevere from being able to draw more cards.
I that was really weird. He had so much will available, and he didn't use any of it.
Now he's choosing to attack with the shade instead of just using the ability. It's gonna make his life total more vulnerable, but I mean, he is not in danger of dying to a Prisia flip because of the Death Scythe. It's just the Izanagi that's really scary here. And here he can safely play an Abdul. Okay, that's not Abdul. Does he have Abdul in his hand? Are you sure?
Yeah, he has an Abdul.
He's just choosing not to play it. He's waiting. He still has the seal available here in his hand. I mean, has the mana available for seal. Whether or not it's in his hand is a completely different story, but just trying to put out as many shades as possible, not really valuing the Abdul that much. And I wonder what that is. I mean, there are Burn to Cinders in the sideboard. Maybe he wants to find a Wind Secluded first, and he knows that he's safe behind shades. But I don't know. I think that playing Abdul to protect the Death Scythe from an Izanagi is really what you want to be doing here. And you know that this is like, he's got 2 mana available to just Hydro. And I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really know either. I don't know why he would attack with the shade either.
So attacking with the shade gets the Tama off the field and also doesn't make him like waste his shade. He can't gain 600 this turn, but he can next turn. So he's just basically killing the Tama and then still saving this resource for later. But it's kind of hard for him to. It might be hard for him to survive long enough. It really depends what he plans to do with this 2 mana. And the fact that Prisia has basically 4 mana available here, they can flip and then they can attack and then they can Goddard and still threaten Keen Sense. And that's just like a super scary place to be. I don't think that this Hydro is going to be an Izanagi because
I'm
if he
guessing.
tries to.
I'm guessing he grabbed a Wind Secluded though. Actually, that's what I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So he'll probably play a Wind Secluded and then flip.
Did he put it on top after he drew or before?
I'm not sure.
I think it was after he drew, so it's just on top. But if he tries to turn this Guinevere with the Prisia, it's just going to die to shade. Does he play Rapid Growth or something? I don't know what's going. Okay, he just has a Wind Secluded.
Yeah, well, he's drawing the card he just Hydra then.
Okay. So he's going to seal the Wind Secluded Refuge. Interesting. It's always neat to see like what Dane prioritizes with the seals, because we've seen him allow Spinning Myths to resolve and then seal Guinevere. Now we're watching him just try and aggressively seal the Wind Secluded. And I think that kind of tells a lot about what is in Dane's hand. If the Wind Secluded is like actually threatening potentially a lethal position here, he probably doesn't have the Moonbeam or the Fairy of Sacred Visions to answer this this Wind Secluded. But he does have a Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly, so that's probably going to grab a Fairy here, and that just, I don't know, using the seal just got the Keen Sense out of the way at a reasonable time.
Yeah, I think he's still okay right here, but that Keen Sense was pretty big, keeping that Wind Secluded out.
Definitely getting into a counter spell war in like the mid game. This is where it gets really. Prisia is just kind of trying to find that opening where she can flip already have out a Wind Secluded, and then just go for the lethal and just like have the keen senses to stop the space times and let Wind Secluded stop Moonbeam. Uh,
I, I
but
I really wish we could see what Dane's hand is right now, so so we could understand like what he's thinking. But he does have that Moonbeam Butterfly for sure. So
yeah, and an Abdul.
and an Abdul, yeah.
I wonder how highly he values his ancient magic counters, and he's been trying to like preserve those, and he hasn't wanted to use the resources. Um,
So he had a barrier too, um, and I guess he's
discarding.
the
Ooh,
barrier.
this is huge. He's discarding Leviton and using the Sacred Elf to keen sense the barrier shadows. And that's going to resolve. So no barrier shadows. Going to pass the turn. This is looking like a very scary position
So
for Dane to be in.
Dane should have definitely kept one of his ancient magic stones open.
That's what I'm thinking. I guess he's trying to.
Soul.
I think he just doesn't have it, and he wants to represent space time instead.
Yeah, but if he left it open, he could have represented anything anyway. But
Yeah, but then you have to use an ancient magic counter for it. I mean, you still have force, so you can still Rune of Soul, Black Moonbeam, and fine. But now there's no answer to this Wind Secluded, so it has to be exactly double Moonbeam to stop this Priscia.
well, he can gain 12 from the shades, but
Yeah. One thing that Nicholas really needs to do, and he might not be aware, is he needs to tap this Death Scythe before he flips his Priscia. Otherwise,
a lot of people
oh,
forget
no.
shades can hit Priscia though. So
Yeah. So this is actually gonna when Nicholas tries to tap his Death Scythe, Dane can go for the double shade to try and kill the Priscia, and that's gonna force the Wind Secluded, which is gonna open up the Black Moonbeam. Unless he draws another Death Scythe or Horn, and that might have been a mistake. If he taps the Death Scythe before he puts his Priscia, it's just at 14 and he's fine. And there's also still like potential space time, so it doesn't matter either way. There's the Heavenly Gust, Millennia Bond. See, okay, so that's why he left open the blue source, because now if he had double black white open, he would have gone down to 3 ancient magic counters and he wouldn't be able to Millennia Bond. So that was why he left the blue source open. That makes a lot of sense.
He still could have Millennia bonded. He would just be down to 3.
And 3 doesn't let him Rune of Soul Black Moonbeam, which is
it doesn't let him do both. Yeah, right.
That's why he left the blue. So razor thin edge here, hoping that Dane does have the Rune of Soul. Not really sure if he does. He's at least threatening it. And what is he playing? Rewriting Laws. Okay, that's I'm sure that there's no resolve.
Yeah, he should not do this in response to
what is he? No, maybe he's just mind gaming. Just trying to do it while he's tapped out. But yeah, the two
it's good he didn't do it there.
Yeah, I'm surprised he untapped the Priscia Stone. That's like usually one that you want to leave tapped because you're gonna cycle it anyway. Doesn't make too much sense, but not really a misplay because he's gonna just float them in anyway if he does decide to cycle it. So what does he go for here? The Death Scythe is still alive, and that's huge here, which means that Priscia is not going to be able to attack, and that's going to allow Dane to just double shoot at the end of turn, or at the beginning of his turn.
I don't think he will. I think he'll wait. He should wait until the next turn, and then when he goes to the pump before recovery.
I don't think so, because if Nicholas is aware of what's going on, then he just won't pump at all before untap. He'll just pump with Leviton and not Death Scythe, and always hold open the Death Scythe, basically. So,
well, if he has a space time in hand or something like that, then he should just do it during his turn as well.
Anyway. Yeah, I think you just get this Priscia dead as soon as possible, and then you just kind of let it, like, you have the Abdul already, so there's your Izanagi out. The kind of stuff that happened last game probably won't happen again. If you double shade this Priscia, you're going to 50 life, and it's a lot harder to die from 50 than it is to die from 14 with a dead Priscia. Another Regalia, that's the Horn. That's going to help a little bit stopping like the infinite shades from coming down, but still going to be an issue.
He's doing this in response to Horn.
In response to Horn, I thought he ended the turn. That's why all the counters got moved off.
I'm not sure. I'm guessing if he's gonna shader, he's gonna do it in response to Horn. That's what I would guess.
That's yeah. But there's no way to do that correctly. I think you just do it on your turn, and like if you have a space time, then like the space time's gonna do that last bit of damage if he lets it resolve.
Well, yeah.
I don't.
Now you have to land 3 things. Like,
Yeah. And have the Moonbeam. Or have the Moonbeam, I guess. He's just going to untap. There's really no reason to do it before untaps on your own turn. So now he gets to take a peek at what he's got. Look for... I don't know, man. You got World Flame Summoning is a pretty good card here. Black Moonbeam, obviously very good. Space-Time Anomaly. Another Shade would be quite excellent. But you're going to need at least 2 more cards to kind of break through this, which is the issue. I feel like a dual attack Sacred Elf isn't bad here. It's gonna die. You can't afford to block with Prisia. But then I don't know, Prisia swings and I don't think Prisia can ever afford to take 600 damage battling the Abdul. So attacking with Abdul is kind of safe, but only kind of. Man, it really depends on what Dane has in his hand here. I wish we had a bit more information. He does have the Moonbeam Butterfly still, doesn't he?
He still has it. He hasn't ever casted it. He doesn't have any green sources though, besides the ancient magic stones. That's why he's been holding it.
Because he really needs to be careful with these ancient magic counters. Does not want to go. Going to 4 is fine, but you really don't want to use them. Just Rune of Soul here. So we are gonna grab the Moonbeam, I guess. Maybe a World Flame Summoning here. I don't know.
I think you have to grab the Moonbeam just because it's cheaper.
So if you grab World Flame Summoning, and then you Moonbeam Butterfly for your... Do you have enough mana to World Flame Summoning and Moonbeam Butterfly for a Fairy of Sacred Vision? You have 8 mana, essentially? I think you do.
You would have enough.
You have 9, and one of those... You have 9, and one of the Ancient Magic counters goes for that. So the only thing that beats you is pitch Leviathan Keen Sense. He's just grabbing the Moonbeam.
He's got the World Flame. So he's going to World Flamer for 15 now.
Yeah. And there's already a Death Scythe from the field, so there's no Imperishable. It's going to clear up the board. And then you just still have the Shades to do whatever on future turns, So now, what does he do here?
So I'm sure he's picking 15 on Prisia and 800 to board.
Yeah. There's some logic to 15 to Prisia and sack a stone.
Yeah. On the other hand, though, that would let him draw a card.
Yeah.
But I understand that logic too, because you can always just kill the Tama with your Abdul.
Yeah. I think it's fine to do board wipe though. I'm knowing how Dane plays, where he likes to just get complete control of the game. You just want to clear up the board, save the Shades for whatever else is coming out. Yeah, that's a dead Prisia once again with no God Art, and looks like Dane just passes, sitting pretty at 3,800 life with 2 Shades. So
actually,
only 2 cards in hand.
If you attacked with Abdul, he could block with Tama, and then he doesn't lose the Sacred Elf. So if you make him sack a stone, it's pretty much the same as you getting rid of the Sacred Elf for sure.
Yeah.
Like he's down 1 will and he doesn't get to draw a card.
And then the 2 cards in hand for Nicholas, we can actually see it's just a Sacred Elf and a Guinevere, not particularly powerful. We still do have a Hydronomica that can get us pretty much anything we want. But I have to hope that no matter what he decides to Hydro here, Dane makes sure to shade the Guinevere before the Swiftness trigger resolves.
What does he have in hand?
He has a Sacred Elf and a Guinevere. Oh, he just offers a handshake.
I don't think he sided in the Burn Descenders. I think he just looked through his deck and didn't see it.
Wow. Well, looks like Dane Petey is going to be our GP Arizona champion, everyone, with the mid-range Alhama'at list. Whew, interesting. I can't believe
that game too, though. I can't believe Nick pulled that out. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah, that was very well played. Not much you could do in this game. All right, well, GG to Dane and Victor, thank you very much for joining me for casting this tournament. It was great to have some invite from you, and probably try and have you back again if you're interested.
Yeah, cool, man. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with that, we're going to be signing off. Thanks for watching, everyone. Do appreciate. Make sure to follow On Tilt Gaming on our social media, Facebook and Twitter, and follow us on Twitch. And Victor,